Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Radio Show. I'm David Knight. It is Friday, June 7th, 2013, the second day of Bilderberg. Alex is going to be joining us in a little while live from London. He's been there all week. It's not just the second day for him. We've got videos. Alex has actually barged in to Bilderberg. He's actually out on a barge, bullhorning Bilderberg, and we've got some live video that's going up on Ustream of that. You can follow everything as it's breaking at Infowars.com/B, as in Bilderberg. And we've got some video of that. We're also going to be playing some audio from that video coming up in the next segment. A lot of things are breaking in the last couple of days about the government spying on people. Now, of course, we've been talking about this for years. Alex has been talking about it for years, just as he's been talking about Bilderberg. And it's kind of interesting to see these things now being talked about by the mainstream media, now coming out into the open. And it's interesting to see how they're spinning this. And we're going to be talking about this. There's a couple of links from Infowars up on the Drudge Report. A key one, a very key link that we've got up there is David Petraeus at Bilderberg to craft a, quote, big data spy grid. That's an article from Infowars' Paul Joseph Watson. Says former CIA director is helping to bolster the same surveillance system that brought him down. Now, Bilderberg's official agenda for 2013 lists one of the areas of discussion as, quote, how big data is changing almost everything, unquote. It's a reference to the Internet of Things, as they put it, along with the ubiquitous growth of social media and how it's transforming the world of surveillance, the ability to foresee and manipulate future events. And at exactly the same time, Watson points out a Homeland Security subcommittee in the U.S. will also be discussing big data and its implications in the context of social media. The discussion about big data is also likely to cover how social media can be used to launch more faux revolutions and social movements, as it was in Egypt, which was aided in no small part by Google. That's right. And as Paul Joseph Watson points out finally in the last sentence, it's very true. Spooks won't have to plant a bug in your home or vehicle. You will be doing it for them. That's right. You buy your smartphone, you buy your computer. That's what they're using. And now today, just yesterday, we learned that the government was going in and getting millions of phone records, all the subscribers to Verizon. Now, don't tell me they've got a reasonable cause for that. You don't get in one court order millions of records about phone calls. There is no such thing as reasonable support for that. And it's not just Verizon. You know that this is just a secret document that's been leaked about one of the one of the mobile carriers. It's going to be everybody that they're going after. There was a big stink just a few weeks ago about the fact that the Obama administration was doing this very same thing to AP, to journalists at AP. And that was a big deal because if you remember back to Watergate, Nixon and Kissinger had charges brought against Nixon was impeached. Some of the charges were the wiretapping charges that he did against reporters like William Safire. There was only about 17 reporters that they wiretapped. And the reason they were doing it was because Kissinger wanted to find out if they were leaking information, where the sources of the information were being leaked about his illegal bombing of Cambodia. Doesn't that sound like today? I mean, they had illegally started a war against Cambodia. Now, of course, the war against Vietnam, you could argue, was also illegal. We now know it was a false flag. It was admitted to be a false flag by McNamara. But they were doing this to keep tabs on people, and that was a big deal, as it should have been. We should have gotten rid of crooks like Nixon, and Kissinger ought to be in jail instead of meeting at Bilderberg right now. But today, the government can do that to everyone in the United States. And the question is, what, if anything, are we going to do about it? We'll be talking about that. We'll be covering Bilderberg with Alex Jones right after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Infowars live radio show. This is Alex Jones Radio, and we're going to be covering Bilderberg with Alex Jones live a little bit later in the program. We're also going to have David Icke coming up as an interview. We've just learned that Alex is going to be having him on probably at the beginning of the second hour. Things are always fluid when we're trying to get connections to the UK live. We have a couple of stories that are up on the Drudge Report. One, a member of a secretive conclave set to speak on record. We'll see if that actually happens, but that's been rumored to be happening, and that's an article we've got up about that. And also, Petraeus at Bilderberg to craft big data spy grid. I just talked about that briefly. Now, of course, he's there with the head of Google, also with the head of Amazon, and in just the last day, we see headline news that this is from the Washington Post. The U.S. is mining data from 9 leading internet firms. Companies deny any knowledge of that, of course. Glenn Greenwald, this is the reporter from The Guardian, who broke the story about the Verizon secret court order spying on millions of customers across the United States. Glenn Greenwald says the U.S. wants to destroy privacy worldwide. Absolutely. That's what the Utah data center is about. It's about recording everybody's conversations worldwide. They're working on the data mining software, and it's going to be kind of like a Terminator type of scenario where in the future, as their data mining gets better, they'll be able to go back to these records that they have stored, and they'll be able to search them in detail. It's kind of like, remember what I think it was Stalin's, one of his henchmen, or as Alex would call him, one of his minions, what he said. He said, bring me the man and I'll find the crime. Well, if you've got all the electronic correspondence of anybody, you can search through it. You can take stuff out of context. You can make a criminal out of anybody. And that's what this is about. This is about an oppressive, authoritarian grid that they're superimposing on the United States, especially. That's where it's going to be focused. Britain faces a decade of austerity. These are all articles that are on Infowars.com. 11-year-old suspended because he said gun. Obama picks the Libya war architect for the UN ambassador. That's right, Samantha Powers. Right after he puts in Susan Rice, who was the one putting out that lie about what was going on in Benghazi, now he's got the other lady who was involved in this, Samantha Powers. I guess I could call her a lady. Should we give her that much respect? I don't know. Senate defeats bills to keep student loan rates low. That's right. We got to get those students indebted from the very beginning to the big banks. And here's one for Rachel Maddow. Rachel, you should read this. This is on Infowars.com. It's originally a Natural News article. Weather weapons have existed for over 15 years, Rachel. That's testimony from the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Maybe you didn't get that memo. So next time you try to take Alex's comments out of context and harangue him about weather modification, you might want to look at the testimony of the Secretary of Defense. Well, we're talking about Google, we're talking about David Petraeus, and we're talking about how the global elites who don't even want you to know, to see their faces, know what they're doing, know that they're in attendance at Bilderberg, they want to know everything about you. And at the heart of that is Google. Now, there was an article from Financial Times, Google is the GE of the 21st century. And that's kind of interesting. The subtitle was, Larry Page has boundless ambition and the capacity to deliver unexpected products. And on the article, this analogy of the GE of the 21st century, what they're saying is that GE really transformed things because more than anybody, although GE didn't develop electricity the way that we ultimately wound up using it. Of course, Edison was trying to do DC current. Tesla was doing AC, which was eventually adapted. Edison's GE essentially was more successful financially than Tesla was. The quote from the article says, compared with the 1890s, Google resembles GE, while Amazon is like Sears Roebuck, the catalog shopping company that transformed U.S. retailing. GE was founded in 1892 and Sears Roebuck in 1893 at a time when the continent was altered by the telegraph and electricity. And so now we see that the equivalent of Sears Roebuck and GE, the people that transformed retailing as well as electricity distribution, those two equivalents in modern day, the 21st century, Google and Amazon, are both at Bilderberg. And of course, it's about big data. It's about information. And Gigi Arnetta had a special report that she aired actually last week, and it's on Google Gestapo. Here's that report.
The Google Gestapo is coming to a city near you. That's right. Right now, they are marching across Europe. Between Lithuania, Britain, even Greece, Google, Street View, and the local tax authorities have partnered up to catch citizens who might be evading taxes. In fact, the Lithuanian tax office has created their own iPhone app so that citizens can easily report on each other. The Lithuanian tax inspectorate says, "We realized we could do more with less and in a shorter time." Hundreds of thousands of dollars are being collected out of an already cash-strapped European public. Last year, over 2,500 citizens turned in other citizens for tax evasion. So this brings a whole new meaning to see something, say something. Look out, the Google Gestapo is coming to a city near you. Go to prisonplanet.tv and sign up. You can share your username and password with up to 10 people. I'm Gigi Ornetta, reporting for Infowars.com.
Great report from Gigi. Now, at Bilderberg, it's reported in The Guardian that David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the UK, is going to attend Bilderberg group meeting. Says Downing Street defends visit to secretive group where Prime Minister will not be accompanied by civil servants. It says, number 10, it's clarifying the position because ministers are usually expected to be accompanied by civil service note takers when they meet business leaders. Yeah, it's kind of like we have laws here about lobbying as well, and there's a huge scandal going on in the UK. They had 3 House of Lords members that were set up in a journalistic scam, being seen to accept bribes for influence peddling. They just resigned last weekend. Prior to that, same thing happened to a conservative MP. We've had our Jack Abramoff scandals, but of course, we're being told by the mainstream media that it's nothing to worry about. Just move along. When we see reports that are coming out now, we're seeing mainstream media reporting about Bilderberg because they look absolutely ridiculous not to. Now that Alex Jones is getting a lot of attention and Drudge has been reporting this for the last couple of years, people know that this is happening. It's gaining momentum. It's got enough exposure that when the mainstream media doesn't cover it, they look duplicitous, they look stupid, people are understanding that they're controlled. And of course, for years, the owners of the mainstream media have been attending Bilderberg and keeping their reporters away. Now we've actually got a report from CNN's Jake Tapper that we'll play later on. I want to play some other stuff here first, but Jake Tapper went and talked about how this was an unreported story, finally covering it after 59 years. CNN is covering it. Of course, you've had high-level executives that have been in attendance, but they're not covering this. But then they like to basically throw any cold water on the idea that anything of significance is going on there. That, of course, is still just a conspiracy theory. And, of course, they criticize Alex for talking about something that for years they told you it was a conspiracy theory if you said the Bilderberg existed. Now it's a conspiracy theory if you say anything is happening there that is of any consequence. It's just amazing how they keep spinning this, but that's what's happening now at this point. Now, Alex, I said earlier, is just this morning, not too long ago, he barged into Bilderberg, attacking it by water. And we've got a live feed from Ustream there. We're going to play a little bit of that. He's having some fun bullhorning the people at Bilderberg. Let's go to that clip.
Legally and put it on your table. Those belong to the beloved German queen. Those swans belong on her royal table. Delicious gravy dripping down the flavor on Stop trying to steal my gravy recipes.
You have the energy?
No, it's more of the varlets. Surely they're here to take a swan illegally and to grill it. Those swans belong to Her Majesty. And you knave peasants know the penalty for taking the queen's game. You also know the penalty for peeing in the bushes. Don't let me catch you. Good. Uh-oh. He heard me say, don't let me catch you peeing in the bushes. He turned about on a mighty carriage, facing the Yankee scallywag, spewing forth the most beautiful voice the officer had ever heard. Somehow
Well, there's Alex having a lot of fun. He loves to do that sort of thing. We love to see him do it. And nobody can do that like Alex. You know, it's important to have passion. as well as to tell the truth. And Alex does that really well. Now, of course, people like Jake Tapper will take things like that out of context. It's very easy when somebody has a lot of passion about an issue to go in, and Alex will talk about an issue for an entire segment, 10, 15 minutes, and get very worked up about the injustice of it. And that's the question, is like, who's going to get worked up about these massive data leaks? There's an article here from RT, and they interview a fellow named Afshan Ratanzi. And he says, I think one can get blasé about the fact that the U.S. is repeatedly breaking its own constitution. Yeah, that's what I see happening here. We see things like, it was not that long ago that Jeff Sessions was talking to Leon Panetta, who was the Secretary of Defense, and he was talking to him about who has the authority to declare war, and trying to get Leon Panetta to say that he was going to come to Congress and he was going to have Congress declare war. Panetta absolutely refused to do it. And Jeff Sessions was absolutely amazed, and yet he couldn't get the outrage. He couldn't get in his face. And guess what? If you can't get the outrage, you can't get a backbone, get in their face, you're not going to do anything about it. We'll be right back with Alex Jones, who has a passion about things. Stay tuned. That's right. If you want to follow all the news that's happening at Bilderberg, go to Infowars.com/B. I'm David Knight. I'm standing in for Alex Jones. He's going to be joining us at the top of the hour with David Icke. Got a breaking interview there live in London. Now, CNN finally covered Bilderberg, and we had a caller yesterday who said he had actually sent some Twitter messages to Jake, and Jake was kind of brusque with him and pushed back kind of at the assumption that he was going to cover Bilderberg when he was getting ready. I guess he was already working on the report. Let's cut to a little bit of that report right now.
Now, if you're thinking this is just another cabal of the people who secretly run the world, so does noted author, provocateur, and conspiracy theorist Alex Jones from Infowars.
Magna Carta has been restricted for the scum globalists that are in there.
Jones is broadcasting live from the conference this week.
They want you dead, Governor.
Why? They're out to kill me.
Some pretty nutty conspiracy theories about the group abound. They're hiding the cure for cancer, for example. But just because Bigfoot believers who are often offensively wrong are on the case here does not mean there isn't reason for the rest of us to be wary, as these masters of the universe confab away from cameras. The conference wraps up on Sunday, and organizers say there will be no resolutions or votes and no policy statements.
I think we'd be very naive to think that all of these people are going to turn up to a meeting unless it has some effect.
Gerard Batten is a member of the European Parliament for London.
I'm sure that they are actually reaching decisions about which way public policy should be going in the countries that are represented, and of course in the European Union.
Now, we have a very good interview with Gerard Batten from UKIP that's going to be coming up, where Alex interviewed him yesterday, and we're going to be playing that, but that's going to be in the next segment. It's a fairly long interview, very substantive. It's not going to be just a soundbite there. But do you notice what Jake Tapper and CNN are doing? Like I said before in the last segment, they can no longer ignore that Bilderberg is happening. They look stupid. So now they've taken another tack. Instead of saying that Alex is right, they essentially kind of throw a backhanded compliment saying, essentially, well, a broken clock can be right 2 times a day. Essentially what he said, just because they're wild-eyed conspiracy theorists and lunatics doesn't mean they can't be right about Bilderberg meeting here. But of course, there's nothing really going on, probably. That's right. Don't look at what happened with the European Union. Don't look at what happened with the Euro. Just ignore all of these plans. Ignore the fact that you've got massive scandals of influence peddling happening in the United States as well as Britain, and yet you've got these most powerful companies and leaders of the Bilderberg, like Prince Bernhard, who have been involved in scandals of influence peddling in the past. Just ignore all of that and say that there's nothing happening here. That's the tactic that the mainstream media is taking right now. Now, we've also just learned that there's a live press report from Obama where he's talking about the leak of information, I guess, from Verizon. I don't know if he's talking about the spying that's going on to the internet firms. You know, every day it's another scandal. And the criticism that we've seen so far, the reactions that we've seen so far is for the White House to defend this. And we've actually seen the NSA supervisor. There we got a video feed of it. Let's go to the audio here and see what they're saying briefly.
And indicate why, in fact, they were doing further probing. Now, with respect to the internet and emails, this does not apply to U.S. citizens, and it does not apply to people living in the United States. And again, in this instance, not only is Congress fully apprised of it, but what is also
That's not true what he just
is
said.
that the FISA court has to authorize it.
That's not true. The FISA law applies to foreign citizens, but in this case, as was reported yesterday, they specifically excluded foreign phones. They went strictly after domestic phones. Continue on with this.
Congress. Bipartisan majorities have approved them. Congress is continually briefed on how these are conducted. There are a whole range of safeguards involved, and federal judges are overseeing the entire program throughout. We're also setting up, we've also set up an audit process when I came into office to make sure that we're, after the fact, making absolutely certain that.
So what he's saying here, go ahead and take that off. What he's saying here is as long as Congress is watching them spy on us, it's okay because they're watching. Our watchers are looking at this and approving illegal, unlawful activity. So that makes it okay as long as they're watching. We just had the U.S. intelligence chief denounce this release of information, not the fact that they were releasing information about customers, but releasing the fact that they were collecting the information. Yes, we're going to talk about that right after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex. Now, Alex is going to be joining us at 8 after the hour, and he's going to be joined live with David Icke for the first time together in a single studio. They're going to be having a live interview at 8 after, so stay tuned for that. Now, to fund this information and to fund this trip here, we've got a couple of specials you might want to take advantage of on InfoWarsStore.com. We've got a Bilderberg special on ProPure water filters, 15% off through, I believe it's the 9th, the end of Bilderberg. So take advantage of that. And also the Survival Seed Vault. Now, one thing that's really key about the Survival Seed Vault is the heirloom seeds. Now, even before GMO became an issue, grocery stores and growers started selectively breeding fruit and to look better, to last longer. And sometimes that happened at the expense of taste. I mean, they even did that with roses. Roses don't have the kind of fragrance that they once had because they started selectively breeding those for appearance. And they're doing the same thing with a lot of the fruit that you buy. If you want some stuff that really tastes great, get some heirloom seeds. And it's also something that's very important for your health. You know, we can't control the Supreme Court. These 9 politically appointed judges just said that Monsanto can do anything that they want to. They can trespass with their pollen and their seed onto other farmers' property, and if that happens, those farmers have to pay Monsanto for the trespass and the contamination of their products with Monsanto's genetically modified seed. And understand the difference between genetically modified stuff versus something that is selectively bred. Look at the genetic variation that you get within dogs, but they're still dogs. You're still breeding dogs to dogs. Now, if you take a dog and you mix in the genes of, let's say, a spider, or you mix so they can do something with webs, I don't know, or take a firefly so that your dog glows in the dark so you don't lose him when he goes out at night. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about with GMO. Has tremendous health consequences, as we saw last summer. The French did an experiment with rats, got massive tumors from eating GMO. It's being banned in Europe. Well, it's creeping into your grocery supply. And over again, we see that we cannot rely on the people in Washington or government to protect us. We have to do it ourselves. That's true whether you're talking about fully informed juries who are going to veto bad laws locally, taking the responsibility, having the backbone to do it themselves, or we're talking about your food supply, making sure your water is clean and unadulterated, making sure that your seeds are real seeds, not some kind of frankenfood. You can do that with a survival seed bank. You can do that with the ProPure filters, and it helps to fund this operation, of course, because it does need money to run, to send people to Europe, to cover Bilderberg, as well as to operate on a daily basis just here from Austin. Now, Alex is in Europe, in London, and he talked yesterday to a UKIP party member, Gerard Batten. Very good interview about Bilderberg. Like I said before, he's going to be on at 8 after, talking to David Icke. But let's take a look at this interview he had yesterday with Gerard Batten.
My name is Gerard Batten. I'm a member of the European Parliament for London for the UK Independence Party. And we're here today outside the Grove Hotel where they're having the Bilderberg meeting because I'm one of those many people from many different political points of view who are asking the question, what are these people meeting for? I think this year is very significant because it's the first year in 59 years that we've actually got members of the mainstream press and media turning up to actually interview people like me and Alex Jones, who's here and filming me today, and asking what's going on. That's a major breakthrough. And I think that the reason that people are very upset about this is because they don't know what the conclusions are of these meetings. Now, they say they don't have any conclusions, but are we really supposed to believe that 130, 140 people of the most powerful, richest, influential people in the world give up their time, fly across the world to come here, and it doesn't have a significance? I don't believe that for a minute. If it isn't significant, why would they come? If it is significant, what does it all mean? And I think the reason that a party like mine, the UK Independence Party, is soaring ahead in the polls and getting votes is because people now feel that politics is something that's done to them and not something that's done for them. And this is the heart of the malaise. People feel that it doesn't matter what they think, it doesn't matter what they believe, they're going to have these policies that they don't want thrust down their throat anyway. And this is where my party's different, whether you agree with us or not. A lot of people feel that we're sincere and we actually stand for certain things, and that's why they're voting for us.
I heard you speaking with the London Telegraph just a few minutes ago, and you've obviously done your research because it's been declassified. The CIA funded the creation of the European Union. UKIP's the fastest growing party, obviously, now in the UK in the last elections, because you guys talk about how you're losing your sovereignty and how you've got EU license plates and 80% of your laws or so are EU and you don't get a vote on it. But again, it's a corporate group that took over America, created the UN, created all this. It's not even really America, but it was the CIA, kind of this corporate body that's anti-free market, kind of monopoly men, that did set up the EU to get rid of the sovereignty of Europe. I mean, if Hitler would have come up with a corporate plan to take over, we'd all be...
He did. Because, in actual fact, in 1942, the German central bank under Dr. Walter Funk, along with leading industrialists, said, how are we going to run the economy of Europe after we've won the war? Because at that time... You know your stuff.
The EU is a Nazi plan.
Europäische Wirtschaftsgemeinschaft, the European Economic Community, that's what they called it, and it had a common agricultural policy, a common this policy, a common that policy. And I haven't done enough research on this, but I'd be willing to bet that some of the civil servants that drew that plan up actually found jobs 10 or 15 years
later. Prince Bernhard was an SS officer, and he was the founder.
And Queen Bernhard of the Netherlands is here. Oh, the Queen of the Netherlands is here.
And her son is about to be king.
Yeah, and she comes to every one of these meetings.
Okay, so specifically, though, talk about the 60s and that vote and the CIA funding the euro.
Well, 1975 is the last time that we had a referendum in this country, and it wasn't about joining the EU because Ted Heath had already taken us in with no mandate, no democratic mandate to do it.
But under a trade deal, just like in the U.S., we're under free trade.
That's what they told us, but everybody who knew anything about it knew that wasn't the case anyway. But anyway, we got in. Harold Wilson won an election saying, I'll give you a referendum on the EU, and it was about whether we should accept his renegotiated terms, stay in or get out. And we don't know the exact figures, but the CIA put money into the Yes campaign. The BBC had meetings every day to make sure that that there was a Yes vote delivered. Major organs of the press were involved in that. So the No vote were totally outspent and outclassed in terms of a campaign.
So is this not a corporate takeover via EU government?
Well, that was the CIA, so presumably they get their money from the government. So I see this as an instrument of American foreign policy at the time, because as Henry Kissinger said, who do I talk to when I want to ring Europe? He doesn't want to ring 20-odd individual nation states and have to worry about dealing with them. He wants to deal with one centralised authority, a United States of Europe. So I see this as your corporate idea may well be very valid.
Well, sure, it's Bilderberg that gives the orders in in the U.S., though. It's the main contingent is Americans and Brits, and then some EU. We've gotten their minutes. We've gotten their documents. They say what you just said. Carl Quigley, who was allowed into their minutes in the 60s, wrote Tragedy and Hope, and he said, autocratic thing run by central bankers, end of freedom, controlling both major parties and countries, Democrat, Republican, Labor, Tory, creating the illusion of choice. The fact that UKIP's getting so popular, speaking out against the New World Order, they criticize you guys then, but it only makes you more popular. Does that signify that people are awakening and people like Nigel Farage and yourself are kind of the Ron Pauls of Europe?
Well, I don't claim any great status myself. Basically, what we're doing, I think, is asking the questions and trying to come up with some answers. And I think more and more people are aware that politics is not being run for their benefit. And people talk about this being a capitalist system. This isn't capitalism. Capitalism is supposed to be fair and open with a free market, and that's not what you're getting now in the modern world, where things are stitched up corporately, as you rightly point out. So it isn't a crisis of capitalism, it's a crisis of democratic government and a fair economic system.
Sure. Last question. This huge lobbying scandal, members of parliament resigning and things, isn't this the big lobbying scandal right here? They've gotten in trouble for criminal lobbying before, back in the 70s with the Lockheed Martin scandal and Prince Bernhard.
Well, I think that the George Osborne, who's here, who's a minister of the government, as indeed Kenneth Clarke, may well be in breach of the ministerial rules, because that lays down that they're supposed to be open about who they're talking to, and particularly with members of the press, they're supposed to log every meeting, and you've got people here who own vast swathes of the media in one way or another. So I think there may well be some questions asked, but I wouldn't hold out much hope of actually anything being done about it.
Is UKIP going to call for criminal investigations of this?
Well, I think what we'll do, when I get back to my office, I'm going to be looking at the rules in detail and writing to David Cameron and raising the issues that I think are relevant. So we'll do our best. But I've written many letters, Alex. A lot of them get ignored and don't often actually result in much action.
But big things have small beginnings.
Yeah.
If you could speak for 1 minute to the Bilderberg attendees, the royalty, the people, the corporate barons, the government regulators, the EU bureaucrats that are arriving with people that they regulate, if you could say 1 minute of words to them, as a member of the European Union Parliament, what would you say to them?
I would say, if you are really here to talk about things in the public interest, which is what they maintain, why do you think you can achieve it in secrecy? Why wouldn't you achieve more by being public? Okay, you could have a discussion about what the problems are and the solutions in private, but any decisions that you arrive at, any policy recommendations should be in public, because you need to take the public with you. And obviously they're not doing that because the public wouldn't want to go on the trip that they've got planned for them. But I'd ask them to do that. If it's genuine, be open and honest about it, because what people feel now is that, as I said earlier, politics is not something that's done for them, it's done to them.
You had a great point, though, about how if they don't have any power, why would they be traveling from all over the world in great expense and secrecy and paying for part of the millions of pounds being spent here if this didn't have any power? And we have so many of their minutes where they set up the euro. They brag. They created the Brain Trust in '54 with the trade agreements, Treaty of Rome, Treaty of London, and then later the votes to hoodwink people into this undemocratic system where the EU bureaucrats are above the law.
Well, exactly. I mean, Alex, even as prominent and important as person as you are, I'm sure you'd find it difficult to get 10 minutes in George Osborne's diary.
Absolutely.
But he can come here and spend 2 or 3 days away from his desk, away from his onerous responsibilities, and spend it. He wouldn't do that unless it was important, and neither would any of these other people. So it must be very important, or they wouldn't do it. I don't believe it's just a talking shop. These people don't have time to waste. They will only do it if it's significant and there's a real reason for doing it.
This is the last question. I know you've got to go. It's so amazing to talk to a member of the EU Parliament who's exposing it from the inside. Looking at this whole event, every time the BBC or the London Telegraph or any of them come up and talk to me or they talk to you, they say, are you a conspiracy theorist? For a long time, they said this didn't even exist. Now we force them to report it, and then we're somehow bad that we're wanting to know what policy is being made in there by this shadowy group. And we have WikiLeaks documents from Bilderberg. They've confirmed are real, where Kissinger says, illegal we do immediately, unconstitutional takes longer. I mean, this is a guy known for war crimes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I've forgotten what your question was there.
I'm sorry. What do you say about them using that throwaway term of conspiracy theorist?
Well, I say, what's the definition of a conspiracy? It's 2 or more people meeting in secret to achieve an end, which might be illegal or illegal. So in the strict use of the word, it is a conspiracy because we don't know what they're talking about, unless they have no objective at all and it's just a friendly chat over a cup of tea, which none of us believe. And I think the bigger conspiracy, in inverted commas, has been the fact that the media haven't spoken about this for 59 years and have allowed it to go on without any reporting. And I think that's the real conspiracy. And now hopefully that's come to an end and the media are actually going to look at what...
Wow, if it has no power, why was the media able to be shut up for so long?
Well, they weren't shut up. Look who owns the media. The media is owned by powerful people, and those same powerful people go to meetings like this. So, in Britain, it's like in America, it's probably very similar. You've got a few powerful people that own newspapers or television stations, and of course they ultimately decide what's reported and what's not.
Sir, thank you so much. How do we visit the UKIP website?
www.ukip.org. Or you can look at my website, which is www.gerardbattenmep.co.uk.
I want to thank you for coming out to this, sir. Thank you so much. And we've got members of the German Bundestag going public saying they've attended and it's evil. We've got members of the British Parliament that are coming out saying they attended and that it should be open. And now Bilderberg is really feeling the heat from our sources, including the BBC guy. He went in there to have lunch with him. He told us that on the phone, and I came out and was interviewed by him. And he admitted they're feeling incredible heat and may even have a press conference. So it is unprecedented the amount of heat they're feeling. They don't like it.
Great. Well, it's quite hot out here as well.
Absolutely. Again, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, folks, great job. Let's continue. It really starts to kick off now.
That was a great interview.
Infowars.
That's UKIP's Gerard Batten. It's not just Nigel Farage. They've got a whole group of Ron Pauls over there. I guess UKIP stands for United Kingdom Independent Pauls. But they've got a lot of guys who really know their stuff over there. And that was a great interview that Alex had with Gerard Batten of UKIP. Remember that at 8 after, Alex is going to be interviewing David Icke live. For the first time, the two of them are going to be together because Alex traveled to cover Bilderberg there. Now, like I said before, another day, another scandal. We've had Verizon coming out yesterday, the secret document that was leaked about that. As The Atlantic reports, the unknown patriot who exposed the government's Verizon spy program. They said, who is it? We don't really know, but it was still marked top secret. As a matter of fact, back in March, Clapper, who is the head of the NSA, James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, denied that the NSA was doing any surveillance. He lied to the Senate. Hey, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Kind of like the way the IRS lied to the Senate year after year about what they were doing. Now we got the NSA lying to the Senate. He was asked directly by Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, and Ron Wyden has been very good in terms of coming after civil liberties violations. I got to give him credit for that. He's done an excellent job. He's been one of the few people to speak out against this stuff. He said to Clapper, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans? That's what he asked Clapper in a March 12th meeting. In response, Clapper replied quickly, no, sir. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect intelligence on Americans, but not wittingly, said the U.S. intelligence chief. That said, particularly in the case of NSA and CIA, there are structures against tracking American citizens in the U.S. for foreign intelligence purposes, and yet we were told yesterday, it was reported, that Americans were specifically targeted, foreigners were specifically excluded. Exactly the opposite of what Obama just said in his press conference. Now, Clapper is still not telling the truth. He came out in defense of this and upset about the fact that information was released, not upset about the fact that records on millions of Americans were released to spooks, but he's upset about the fact that anybody knows that that happened. He said, disclosures, this is in The Guardian. He said, it says, disclosure of the massive surveillance of phone records and internet communications risks, quote, long-lasting and irreversible harm, unquote, to U.S. national security, said Clapper, Director of National Intelligence. Late on Thursday night, U.S. time, James Clapper issued a bullet point defense of the surveillance programs disclosed by The Guardian and The Washington Post, saying that they contained, quote, numerous safeguards that protect privacy and civil liberties. How do you say that when you've had millions of these things released? Obviously, that didn't work, right? And obviously, it is not just Verizon. It's going to be everybody. And then today, we have breaking information about PRISM, where they're going in and looking at a lot more information. We'll talk about that coming up after the break. Alex has a great speech about PRISM as part of an interview at Bilderberg. We're going to be possibly playing that later in the program. We'll see how that works out. But David Icke is coming up after the hour at 8 after, so stay tuned.
You could see him arrive. He stood 6'6"
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Radio Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex Jones. I'm joined here in the studio with Jakari Jackson. We're going to be talking about some breaking news here domestically about sheriffs in just a moment. But I wanted to finish up with what I was just talking about just before the break. I had one more quote I wanted to go over from James Clapper. Now, he is the Director of U.S. National Security. He went before the Senate March 12th, lied about what they were doing, and then he is upset about the fact that this secret program of espionage on all Americans was disclosed. Well, we've been talking about it for a long time. People didn't believe us, but now that this is out in the news, we'll just have to see where this is headed. Hopefully this will wake people up. I know when I came to work here at Infowars, I had a couple of people tell me it was a dangerous thing. I was putting a target on my back. You know what? They've got a target on everybody's back. That's what I said at the time, and that is true. We already knew they were recording everybody's phone calls. They were setting up a massive data center so they could mine it in the future. Hopefully now, at this point, the best thing that could come out of it is people can get out of denial about the pervasive espionage of our government against everyone in this country, trying to make any of us criminals, trying to intimidate any of us. We've got to not be intimidated, and we've got to see that real change is done. Get rid of the passive people like Jeff Sessions who see something, but they don't do anything about it. Listen to this last quote. This is from James Clapper after he discovered that this went out. He says, "There is a robust legal regime in place that governs all activities conducted pursuant to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act." Well, that's just not true. That's just not true. They didn't do it. It is a robust, illegal regime that we have in Washington, and that's what we've got to get rid of. Now, I'm joined here by Jakari Jackson. How you doing, Jakari?
Doing well. Not so well after hearing that information, but overall, doing okay.
Now, we had some breaking news that came in yesterday, just as we were switching over to live coverage in Bilderberg, and it was just kind of breaking, and so we didn't have a lot of details about it, and it's still a little bit sketchy as far as the details about it, but tell us what happened with a sheriff in Florida.
Well, this is actually something we got off our tip line, show tips at Infowars.com, so thank you to that viewer. We have this article, Florida sheriff arrested after defending Second Amendment. Now, this is Florida Sheriff Nick Finch. He was booked into his own jail after releasing a man from the jail. And you say, why would he release a man from the jail? The man was arrested for carrying a firearm in his vehicle without a permit, which is a third-degree felony in the state of Florida. The sheriff said, hey, I don't want this guy in my jail under these trumped-up charges. He releases the man, or allegedly releases the man, I should say. And now the governor had called for him to be suspended, so he's currently on suspension at the moment.
He also has some legal jeopardy himself, doesn't he? They went in and they took out the duly elected sheriff who was just elected in November. They removed him and they put in someone else, and they have charged him. Now he can get charged with, I believe, a third-degree felony.
Yes, they said, I believe it was evidence tampering, or actually I think the official charge is one count of official misconduct is the actual charge he's being charged with. And I had a chance, I reached out to Sheriff Mack yesterday, a friend of our show, and I said, Sheriff, do you know anything
about this? He's with the constitutional sheriffs.
Constitutional sheriffs, and I had a chance to talk to him. And he says, I know of this guy. I don't know him real well, but I know the guy, and he's not taking phone calls right now for legal reasons and so on and so forth. But I said, Sheriff Mack, what do you think about this situation? He said, regardless if the governor got involved or not, it should have never gotten to the point where the sheriff was suspended from his duties.
That's right. What we're seeing now is we're seeing the government over and over again breaking over the barriers that have been set for it, going into jurisdictional areas where they don't have jurisdiction, going in and breaking their own laws. It's bad enough that they had FISA, but they don't even pay attention to FISA. They're now getting records of domestic American citizens under that FISA Act. We'll be right back after the hour. We're going to have David Icke and Alex Jones coming up at 8 after. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Radio Show. I'm David Knight. Alex is not live from Austin, Texas, but he is live from London, England. And he is joined there in studio for the first time with David Icke. And we're going to go to that interview right now. Alex, can you hear me?
Absolutely, David. We are live here in Watford, a suburb of northwest London, and it really is historical that hundreds of international media outlets, German, Italian, Russian, French, British, AP from the United States, they are all here covering a group that in many Western countries they said did not exist. And so we've got a lot of big breaking news with David Cameron, the Prime Minister, now publicly today on Sky Television, Rupert Murdoch's outfit here in the UK, I'm going to Bilderberg. So now they've gone from it doesn't exist to, oh, it's no big deal, it's not powerful, you're a kook to want to know about this secret colluding lobbying group, to now, okay, it's like a G20 meeting, no big deal. But the point is, this has really discredited the power structure because they're behaving like and acting like they've never criticized people that talk about this. And this is in the midst of a giant lobbying scandal here in the UK. And we also got on a barge and actually got onto the grounds and had them all freak out. The police tried to board us with a boat. That was all pretty crazy. And then they made the boat stop and threw us off. And I walked back 3 miles, which is good. I need the exercise. But, folks, when we come back from break, some stations join us. That's why he's not on yet. Right there, first time ever. Oh, yeah. David Icke in here in our little makeshift studio, coming to you across the world. Again, the entire planet is starting to wake up to this, thanks to people like Jim Tucker, David Icke, myself. George Norrie is one of the first big outlets outside of my show in the U.S., and obviously a much bigger AM and FM presence to break it in the last decade. So George Norrie deserves a lot of credit. And by the way, George Norrie's been contacting us once we come on with an update tonight. We haven't gotten back with him yet. We're just now doing that. And I think I'm on John B. Wells Saturday. But if I haven't responded, I kind of forgot in the last few days that Wells had contacted us. If I haven't responded, I want to come on. That's how I communicate with people now, is over the radio. And hi to my wife and children. Love you out there. But when we come back, I'm going to try to get serious and try to go over a lot of questions in my mind for David Icke, because I've always liked the guy. But now meeting him in person, like him even more. He has quite the presence. And so does his son, very, very nice fella, who's going to be on with us and also works on the website, davidicke.com. So that is coming up after this quick break. My head is spinning right now at the amount of coverage of this and the fact that people are figuring out, wait, the regulators are meeting with the regulated, and these are the mega bankers that get trillions of our dollars. And why are the police, trying to block protesters from getting into the area when they're having their own future destroyed? This is really the incredible hoax that the establishment had with our trust, that they didn't exist and that the buck stops with the prime minister or the president. This is the hoax imploding and falling in on itself right now. That is what we're seeing happen. And now the real debate can start taking place about what is the agenda of these controllers. And so David Icke is here with us. I'll tell you the one thing that really gets through to the police I've talked to, because there's only one country that has higher cancer rates in some cancers than the United States, and that's the UK. And then Russia's right behind us. Russians used to live like 76 years. Now it's 50-something. So they actually die quicker than anybody in the West now. But when I talk about how they're putting cancer viruses in the vaccines, they've been caught doing it, and sterilants, and how it's a Bilderberg program. And I tell the cops, I bet you got kids dying of cancer. I bet your wife or son's dying. I bet you've got family dying young. And the cops start freaking out going, how do you know that? And I go, look, today, I've been saying this the last 4 or 5 days while I've been here in advance of this. Today, the London Independent, this is in the hotel, half of Britons alive in 2020 will get cancer. But there's never discussion why. They admit it's exploding in here. Pediatric cancers in the U.S., on average, over 10,000% increase. Autism, over a 10,000% increase from 1 in 25,000 to 1 in 50-something. So the dehumanization, extermination program is taking place. We'll be back with David Icke and the fall of Bilderberg. I don't normally travel a lot. People know that. But I could see that we're at a critical juncture in modern history right now, with humanity awakening to the fact that there are corrupt powers that be, that there are secretive, oppressive agendas going on. And with me here in studio for the first time ever, it's so great to be able to meet him in person. Even more impressed now, getting to just meet him just about an hour ago when he graciously came here first to this interview with us when he got for Watford, is David Icke. We're going to go to him in just a moment. But directing you to drudgereport.com and Infowars.com, I just want to say that it is amazing to be able to see how the alternative media has been able to become the mainstream media, and the facade, like Ceausescu's Romania falling, is happening. I had so much mainstream media here. Let's not exaggerate. I probably did 15 international TV interviews today, probably 10 yesterday or more. And most of them were not being smart-mouthed. And they were actually, oh, yes, now it's come out. The NSA spying, this government spying, it's illegal. There's illegal lobbying. So now what do we do? Then the BBC comes over and is like, aha, none of it's real. There's no one meeting here. Aha. It was like comic book characters. And I said, this is why you're so hated. You're acting like this. But look at these headlines up at Drudge. A lot of them are also at Infowars.com. But Drudge has that way of laying them out here. And I'm seeing people finally get it. The internet from hell, NSA, FBI secretly mining data from internet firms. They quite literally can watch your ideas as you type. That's a quote, mainstream news. What did I tell you 18 years ago? Because it was all in the Telecommunications Act, and it's all standardized worldwide by the globalists. It's a centralized corporate tyranny. A top secret PRISM program, a PRISM, visit data trove, vast data trove, billions of phone calls recorded daily, paper, Obama agenda, lost in firestorm. New York Times says Obama cannot lead anymore. I saw that yesterday. Obama comes out and says nobody is listening to your telephone calls. They're listening on record, but he tells us it's okay. It goes on here. Petraeus at Bilderberg to craft big data spy grid. That's on their own agenda. But I have sources inside Bilderberg. I'm going to tell you what they've told me after David Icke leaves us, but I'll share some of it with him. But I want to hear from him. I'm going to get to him in a moment. I know a lot of stations just joined us. We've got UK Prime Minister going from the media saying it doesn't exist to, oh, big deal, to now the Prime Minister showing up in almost as much security as you'd see at, a G20 or something. I mean, this is crazy. And the fact that they have denied all of this is blowing up in their face. And their intimidation of reporters saying, we'll arrest you if you expose any of our spying, any of our persecution, we'll arrest you. I'm seeing a revolt by their own minions who were compartmentalized because of the intimidation. I think they thought we were intimidated, the general public, instead of just lazy. And I think it's backfiring on them. So that's some of what's coming up today. We'll also give you the headlines that are on Infowars.com. But joining us here in studio for the rest of this hour and 20 minutes into the next hour is David Icke. And you would have thought that the King of England had arrived, to visit with the people. In fact, they were a lot more excited than that when David showed up. I've got to be honest. When I showed up, I was mobbed. I think they have a word for it in rugby. What do they call it?
A scrum.
A scrum. Well, when David arrived, it was a super scrum, and I tell you, man, it is great to be here with you. It is great to meet you in person, and thank you for spending time with us.
No problem.
What is going on in the world?
Nice to meet you after all this time in a hotel room in Watford. Who'd have thought it?
Absolutely.
What's going on in the world, Alex? I think we're at a very special time because, when I started out 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, it was a lonely road. I mean, anyone who's been in this road a long time knows that there weren't many interested people that long ago. Do you want me to move around?
Scoot in just a little bit, yeah.
Okay. And now, suddenly, this cusp moment where we're getting towards a critical mass of people where the waters are starting to break. And I think two things are happening. First of all, the endless toil and effort, apparently against all the odds, banging your head against a wall, year after year, decade after decade. Eventually, we've seen a point now where the wall is starting to show cracks in it. We're starting to get this information out to enough people so that they can see that the world is very much different to what they thought it was. But there's something else happening, which I think is just as important in a way, and interacts with that, and that is that this agenda has now reached the point where it's not in the shadows anymore in terms of the way it's playing out. It's still in the shadows in the deep inner sanctum that's orchestrating it, but in the way it's playing out, in the banking crash, in austerity, where there's been this fantastic transfer of wealth from the people through governments to banks and the elite, and after Cyprus now they've started to actually take the government out of that equation and go straight into people's bank accounts. All these things are coming together to get people to look at the world in a different way. People are seeing the world and they're thinking, what's happening? I don't like what's going on. This is happening, that's happening, what's going on? Fortunately, after all these years of effort, there is now a massive alternative media that actually has the ability, which is what's going on, to say to people in that state, this is why it's happening. And it's making sense to people. It's making sense of the world to people that the normal mainstream explanations of everything are not making. And this combination of people's life experience and the information explaining the world in a different way, this is coming together in a way that is really starting to break the waters. And this weekend is so symbolic for me. You know, we've all been chasing and trying to expose the Bilderberg group for a very long time, decades, when people said it didn't exist and it didn't matter even if it did. And the mainstream media didn't touch it. You never saw it mentioned. These people were meeting in different parts of the world, and the mainstream media wasn't mentioning it. And now in Britain, in 2013, we have seen the biggest mainstream exposure of Bilderberg in history. And we're not finished yet. There's 2 days to go. And the genie is out of the bottle, and it ain't going back. Because once you start to realize, and it's new to you, that actually these people who are making decisions about where the direction of everybody's lives on the planet are going, and they're meeting in secret with the corporations and the banks and the inner sanctum of the elite in a hotel in secret, and we're not allowed to know what they're officially what they're discussing and all the rest of it. This has been a bloody revelation to people who are new to this, and it's happened because this has got into the mainstream for the first time. It's a great weekend.
It's the discovery of the shadow government.
Yeah, you know what we've been talking about all these years, that actually if you go high enough, there's only one oil company, there's only one biotech company, there's only one big pharma company. In the end, there's only one political party in terms of major political parties in every country. That's kind of been, oh yeah, well, you know, no, that's over the top. That's exaggeration. But here we have, in Watford, on the outskirts of London, the proof of that in the sense of these different elements, which in any so-called democratic society should be kept apart from everybody. And if there are discussions going on and what have you, they should be in public. Now it's in the open and in the mainstream media, not the big picture of why it's happening, but the fact that it is happening. And this is opening so many people's eyes to the fact that this hidden hand is not a myth, it's the truth. It's a great weekend. It's a pivotal weekend. And it's a weekend we'll look back at and say, yeah, you can put your finger on that. That was the time that the change and the transformation became obvious.
Again, David Icke is our guest in studio here in our hotel room, our makeshift studio in Watford, England. And I've got a bunch of questions for David. We're going to break here in a few minutes. We can get started with these now. But I wanted you to repeat what you said when you first got there and gave kind of an impromptu speech. Whenever I made the point that they want us poor. I mean, they write documents, they say that, but still the general public, I don't think, gets why they want us poor. So, David, we got about 2 minutes to break. Describe why they want us poor.
Well, if anyone's seen the movie The Hunger Games, where you had a tiny elite in what they call the capital, in high-tech, mega luxury, and the rest of the population in the country was in mega poverty. What they want, you know, people talk all the time, and so they should, about the attack on the middle class in America. Well, this attack on what we call the middle class is slightly different meaning, but in this country too. And the reason that that's being targeted is because if you have a middle class as was, you have a graph which goes from poor up to rich. If you look at the graph now, I saw one the other day.
Skip this network break. We're skipping the break. Go.
I saw one the other day on an official mainstream website in America, and it went like this: poor, middle class, hardly much movement, and then straight up. And the straight up was 1%, and it was so big that they had to put the top of that pyramid next to it to get it on the page. And we're already getting there. And so this is the society they want. And for me, when you're researching something, knowing what the end is and knowing the means of manipulation to get there are absolutely crucial to understanding the game. And what they want is a mega, mega rich. I mean, it's become known as the 1%. It's probably much less than that if you get the mega, mega rich. Right up there, right, mountain high. And then a mega poor population that's basically in the same boat. And this is why I say to people, and just very quickly, this is why the Cyprus thing was set as a precedent to go directly, not through governments, to go directly into the bank accounts of people.
You walk through the bailouts. Explain how they do it. First, it's too big to fail. They sign you onto that. Then explain it.
Well, what they did in 2008 was they crashed the economic system on purpose. Problem, reaction, solution. They then started this incredible transfer of wealth for the reasons I'm just talking about, from the people to the banks and the elite via governments. What they did in doing that was transfer the problem from a banking crisis into a government debt crisis. This was then passed on from the governments to the people. It became now a people crisis on the basis of the austerity programs all over the world. Well, no, we bailed out the banks, so we haven't got the money for all these services, so austerity. So there's a massive transfer of wealth from the people to the elite, with the people suffering and no one else. Then you moved with Cyprus to the next stage of this, when instead of going stealing the wealth of the people via governments to the elite and the banking system, they went direct into the bank accounts of the people. A lot of them who were very, very rich in Cyprus bank accounts, who are a lot less richer now, direct to their accounts. And what this is doing is setting the precedent to do it all over the world, because when there's another banking crisis, and there's so many planned for this very reason.
This was a little bitty baby beta test.
What it was, Alex, especially in Europe and in the European Union, it was setting the precedent. Precedent is a powerful, powerful thing to set, because when the next banking crisis comes and there's a problem and they've got to bail out the bank or the rest of it, they're now going to say, well, hold on a second, governments are going to say this, and the European Union's going to say this. We can't justify bailing out the banks. Well, what about the people in Cyprus? We can't just let people go straight to their bank accounts and not do it here. And that's the idea. And so I'll say this to people around the world who at the moment think they're well off, and at the moment think that this does not affect them and it's not your problem. If you are not a member of this elite of the elite, if you are not a member of this upper echelon of this 1%, then they want your money too, and they're coming for it. And this precedent set in Cyprus is a massive step towards that. They want you as poor as the people you think, well, they're poor, they're not my problem. The idea is to make it your problem. And therefore, we have to come together and put down the fault lines of income bracket and so-called class. We're in this together because they want us all mega poor, not just the currently mega poor.
That's right. It is a total tool of political control, and they write books about it. Whether it's Henry Kissinger and his Memorandum 200, or whether it's the science czar, John P. Holdren, or Agenda 21, they say they want a post-industrial world where they're in these government and corporate and university reservations. They're above the law. They get the life extension technology. They get it all. And that's only the next phase. In fact, where did that newspaper go that I had? Here it is, right here, David. This is what I want to talk to you about next. Then we'll get back into Bilderberg. We'll get back into, is this really the beginning of the fall of Bilderberg? I also see a key line we may be passing where, okay, we have the awakening, but if people don't do something, then it just kind of sets a precedent that, okay, we accept that. Yeah. So I want to discuss that with you. I've got a bunch of points I want to go over, but the London Independent, and you look at the cover of it today, half of Britons alive in 2020 will get cancer. And they're now saying in the next few years, half of Americans will have diabetes. And in the rats and all the studies and all of it, we know what the vaccines, we know what the GMO, we know what the sodium fluoride, we know what it's doing. And then the globalists write books from Bertrand Russell to John P. Holdren currently. They get caught all over the world giving little kids SV40 cancer virus. They know what they're doing, and they're just getting us all used to everybody's got cancer, everybody's got Parkinson's early, everybody's got neurological disorders, everybody's got diseases, everybody's got problems. And then don't worry, we've got treatments for the disease you've now got, and let's, never mind that breast cancer is up 3,000%, or children's cancer is up over 10,000%, and again, America and England lead the world because we're run by these eugenicists. Hitler was their man. He just went a little bit early and only after specific groups. They're going after the whole world in a scientific program, and it just hits me that, of course, I'm not worried about them killing me, or I'm not worried about being shut down. I'm not worried about being sued or any of this, because I've read their own words. I know how diabolical it is. I know I'm living in the equivalent of a science fiction nightmare. They want the whole world and our numbers reduced by at least 80%. They're on record. They're on record doing secret experiments against us all over the world. We know the people running our countries are the most wicked people on the earth. We know they're funding al-Qaeda and using them on innocent countries like Libya and Syria. We know they're spying on us without warrants. We now know they're criminal. What we've all said, unfortunately, is all being confirmed. And it's bizarre now to have people really listening to us, because now there's that much more of a responsibility. But what about the fact that this attack is so over the top, David Icke, that's what they almost have over on us, is that it's so diabolical, so crazy, so evil that, yeah, people can finally get they're spying on you without warrants. They can finally get that they're taking poor people's tax money and giving it to offshore billionaires that control trillions, who want their money to be worth more by bankrupting you so they can buy it for pennies on the dollar. They're replacing humans with robots at Foxconn factories and saying, good, go jump off the roof. I mean, we are already in the middle of just insane times. How much more crazy will it get? And how does this cancer situation tie into it all? Will people sit there and watch their families die, David Icke, and not care about the globalists doing it to them?
I've said for so many years, one of the greatest ways of suppressing a population is to suppress their sense of the possible. If you could suppress their sense of what is possible by hiding technology, by hiding the agenda, by hiding the cause of all these things you're talking about, then people will sit there like a frog sitting in a boiling water, and they will get boiled because they can't see the possibility that actually they might get boiled, or even that they're in the process of being so. And so the biggest, and this is the mainstream media, the mainstream media's range of what is possible is so minute, and this then is transferred by people getting most of their information through the mainstream media to the population. What is so brilliant about this Bilderberg weekend, as it's turned out, is Bilderberg it's a part of the web, and it's part of the agenda that people can use to enter the web in terms of understanding it, because it's at a level that they can deal with. It's politicians and corporations, chiefs and what have you.
Illegal lobbying.
Yeah, meeting together in secret, and it's like, what's going on? But the Bilderberg group is merely a strand in the web, and it's well out from the center, the spider. And if you go back from the Bilderberg group towards the spider, the closer you get, the more evil, the more satanic, the more secretive and exclusive these strands in the web become. You go that way from the Bilderberg group into mainstream society, and you're going into governments and departments and corporations where the same agreed agenda plays out.
Absolutely, extremely powerful with David Icke. I want to come back and talk about what is at the core of the spider, and how you said that Savelle at the BBC was basically a pedophile years ago. You laid all this out, and I would hear this 17 years ago, and I'd go, he says a lot of good stuff, but I can't buy this. And then it all just keeps coming true, coming true, coming true. How did you know all this? I guess you worked there. We're going to talk to David Icke and more straight ahead, and he'll be with you in the next hour for some. We'll take your phone calls, and you'll meet his son. Stay with us.
We're on the...
Everything that we promote, everything I sell, everything I do to fund our operation is something that I personally use, something I believe in. And meeting the men, women, and children from all over the UK and Europe that have come here, I've probably shook 1,000 hands, because most people just come through for a few hours and leave. And they were already there on Wednesday. They were there on Thursday. They were there today. We're expecting thousands tomorrow. I talked to the police. They've been kind of clicking, the people that come through, and they estimate there's been about 2,000 people through so far. I see them. It really humbles me to know that they're so awake, and that it's been their support and your support out there that has made what Infowars.com has done possible. And I'm not that, smart of a guy. I'm not that great of a guy. And I've had incredible success because I have studied history and knew that these globalists were evil, and that we had a job to do exposing them. We're going to go back to David Icke in a moment and continue in this very important discussion we're having, and give you the latest on Bilderberg and a bunch of other world news that's taking place. But first off, this broadcast is listener supported. And so I promote things that I believe in, that I use: films, books, non-GMO, high quality seeds at the Seed Center at Infowars, store.com. That's what funds our operation. And we're doing a special until the 9th, when Bilderberg officially ends on Sunday, where you can get 15% off the best stainless steel gravity-fed filters out there. We've got the fluoride filters, everything. It either reduces down to non-detectable levels or cuts out everything. And it's the first thing you can do. The globalists treat you like animals. They're on record spike in the water with radioactive isotopes, hydrofluorosilicic acid, all of it. They're trying to block states passing laws to take it out of the water in the U.S. Same thing's going on in Europe and the UK. So go to InfoWarsStore.com, and you can find the entire line of water filters discounted 15% off with promo code WATER15. And you're not only getting the best deal out there on a great gravity-fed stainless steel filtration system, you're also supporting us being here in the UK to come with the resources and the media and just expose everything we can. And this is historical. And even if you already have a water filter or can't afford one, doesn't matter. Spread the word about Infowars.com, about Prisonplanet.com. Spread the word about all the guests that we have on. And you should start your own YouTube or your own site. We need more people getting more out with more eyes to organically try to resist this technocracy that we are facing. There's a lot of other sponsors like efoodsdirect.com/Alex for the specials that are also making this trip possible. Bodyarmor.com is also making this trip possible. So again, whatever you do, InfoWarsStore.com, that's what's making it all possible. And again, your prayers as well and support. Okay, so we went to break, and I was talking to David about this anti-human agenda, and why are every major institution in the world whether it's Russia or China or England or the U.S., Catholic Church or the BBC, or why is it pedophiles and necrophiliacs and devil worshippers? I mean, I never get sick of my wife. I never get sick of a glass of red wine. I never get sick of enchiladas. I never get sick of a sunrise or sunset. I never get tired of just green grass, good stuff, paddling in a kayak down the river. I do not get how they're so into this, but that's why they win. What you were talking about is that they've shrunk the possible, so we're so naive. David Icke, you can say what you want about him. That's when I realized about 15 years ago, this guy is nothing but positive. He expands your window and forces you with things that sound so radical, whether he's completely right or not. None of us are perfect. We see through rose-colored glasses. David Icke forces you to expand the window of perception of the possible, because I would hear him talk about the BBC's full of pedophiles and they have sex with dead bodies and they drink blood. And Al Gore drinks blood. And then I actually found the article where he falls around with bags of blood in case he's injured. And then I found out more about him. These people are just given over. They are psychopaths with air forces. They are devil worshippers with nuclear weapons. And look at history. We know all the ancient emperors in Rome and the Aztecs were all crazy nuts. So of course, these are 21st century versions of that. So get into that and the cancer rates exploding and what they're doing and what their master plan is. And then more in Bilderberg, what this means that we forced it out in the open and that crossroads we're at, David Icke.
Well, all these things come together in the end. I mean, the more you research and the more you understand, the more every dot connects. And what I was saying a few minutes ago about the greatest, or one of the greatest defenses that this conspiracy has is suppressing the sense of the possible, and the media are constantly doing that. And yes, this is a great weekend, fantastic, and I hope as many people come here as can get here tomorrow as possible. And it's a way of entering the web in a way that people can understand and appreciate within their view of the world, within the blinkers that we're manipulated to wear all our lives. But I say this to you, this is a way of entering the web, and it's a very significant strand in the web. But to understand the Bilderberg group's part in all this, and to understand the web itself, all preconceived ideas since the day you were born, all belief systems, all senses of the impossible just have to be allowed to fall. And let information be your guide, not preconceived idea, belief, which censors where you will go and what you will consider to be possible. Because the Bilderberg group is a strand within a satanic conspiracy that is so deep, so evil, so completely beyond what we would perceive as any form of humanity or heart or compassion or any of it, empathy, that we really do have to open our minds to let in the truth of what we're facing. And that's not to be frightened, that's not to be scared of it. This evil only prospers because it has put us in a tiny box of perception, understanding, and ignorance of the world we live in and the reality we're experiencing. If it was all powerful, it would not have to do that. And if we open our minds, open our hearts, and let our minds expand where they want to go, rather than holding them in a position that we're programmed to hold them, then together, this is a house of cards that we're looking at. This all-powerful evil. No, it's a house of cards, and it's absolutely dependent for its survival on humanity en masse staying asleep. So it's not something to fear, it is something to face. And so anyone that's coming in now and seeing this, Bilderberg, oh my goodness, what they meet in secret, oh, I didn't know that was going on. Well, strap in, because that's the start of the journey through the web. Because, you know, what Alex was talking about is what is actually unfolding in front of our eyes. there is a mass operation, not coming, not somewhere over the rainbow, sometime never, that is happening in our lives now, which is to create a massive, massive cull of the population. And this is not something where large numbers of people suddenly just keel over because people go, hey, what's happening? This is a cumulative destroying of the human immune system and a war on the human body and the human mind. And it's being done because of the web. The spider at the center of the web therefore controls the policy of corporations, biotech corporations like Monsanto, that are producing the GM foods which are genetically modifying us. The same spider is controlling the pharmaceutical industry, which is destroying the immune system and a war with the body through pharmaceutical drugs and vaccines. The same spider is controlling the network of mega parasites that we call the banking system. That same spider is dictating through the web to governments to introduce the agenda that the spider is dictating. This is a major part of what Bilderberg does in this interface between the hidden and the world that we see. So it's time not just to recognize what the Bilderberg group is, but what a great moment that people are now seeing it in such numbers, but to make that the first step, because this spider's web, this rabbit hole, whatever analogy you want, is so deep, and we need to face it so we can sort it out, and therefore all impossibles must be off if we're going to understand what's really happening.
Absolutely. I meant to do this today, and I forgot to tell the crew, if they can search engine this Charlie Skelton article, it was linked up on Infowars.com, but if they just search Bilderberg 2013, friendly policeman, a press zone, and the One Show, if they'll just search one of Charlie Skelton's, or just go to Charlie Skelton's articles on The Guardian and go to Bilderberg 2013, friendly policeman, a press zone, and the One Show. And myself and Leanne McAdoo were over there taking photos while the crew was doing video interviews as the globalists drove in yesterday. And we both missed the shot, but I saw it with my eye. And I missed that. And then I looked over and another came by, because it's hard when they're driving by fast to catch it. The one spot you can get a shot. They were all driving by, because I saw this 3 times. And thank God somebody caught it. They caught it on multiple cars. They would drive by with Daily Mails, because the first time I saw it, I said, that's just got to be a coincidence. A second time, a third time. Now, maybe the Mercedes cab company said, here, cover your face with this, but it's the image of them covering their faces. They don't have tinted windows with a tabloid magazine, a newspaper. They would drive by with newspapers over their faces, and there's a photo of this. Again, Bilderberg 2013, friendly policeman. Just search engine that, folks. Click news, and you'll get it. Bilderberg 2013, friendly policeman. Did the office, were you guys able to find that yet? Okay, they're showing it right now on screen, David. Look at this. Now, because, again, I wasn't up there even much of the time. A bunch of them came in at once, so I was sitting there, and I saw it once. I said, did we get that? No, it's blurred. Oh, this the guy got it. Okay, did we get that? Yeah, finally, they went 3 times. 3 cars went by with the Daily Mail tabloid up with the words, child porn teacher allowed back in classroom. Why would they drive by with a tabloid saying child porn when you've been exposing Savelle and the royal family and all this? What is really going on here, David Icke?
Well, it's funny, because I noticed that this morning just before I left home to come up here. I saw one of those pictures, and I thought, well, what an appropriate bloody headline to cover your face with. You know, we chatted about
There's
this.
a lot of irony.
Yeah, we've chatted about this in America. We've been in America times. One of the things that we, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, just scoot into it.
One of the things that I'm talking about when I say we have to expand our sense of the possible is that this web, in the end, is being orchestrated from beyond human sight by a force that is anything but human. And the rituals, the satanic rituals to the gods that these people are so into and constantly into. The gods are these entities that are operating outside human sight, which are orchestrating this agenda. Now, I know people are...
But why drive through covering your face saying child porn?
Well, I mean, in many ways, it's just literally he's putting it over his face, but he's putting it in ours, isn't he? But the thing is that the reason they're so into Satanism and so into pedophilia is because these entities feed off human energy.
Satanists kill because they believe they're getting power.
They're feeding off human energy. They're feeding off fear. This is why they've created a structure in human society that is a global factory of fear and anxiety.
And death.
Yeah, death. They feed off death. That's part
torture.
That's part of all of it.
We're the good guys. We torture and bomb for peace.
And this is the point about pedophilia. I've been researching this a very, very long time because I've just gone where the music took me or the information and not let preconceived idea block me. And I don't care what people think about me, so it's not made me keep my mouth shut through fear of being ridiculed. I'm quite used to that, funnily enough. But I've been researching this a long time in multiple countries, and I'll tell you this. The energy that these entities want more than anything else is a child's energy before puberty, when changes happen which take it beyond perfection for them. It's a nectar to them. And so what's happening when the pedophile is having sex with the child? The pedophile is the conduit by the possessing entity, because all these people are bloody possessed by these entities. So it's vampires. Yes, and you know, this is why the whole stories of vampires, this is why the British royal family, like Charles, go back to Vlad the Impaler. They're intergenerational bloodline vampires. They feed off, people think of, you know, drinking blood, and that's true, but it's energy.
By the way, I heard you like 15 years ago talk about that, although that's pure bull, and now it's all over the news that he lives in Transylvania and is basically a Dracul.
Yeah, but you know, people think of vampires. They feed off blood. Yes, true. That is true. But the major thing they feed on, and often blood is just an expression of that, is energy. And so they're looking for the energy of children. And this is why you find this dramatic ratio of pedophiles and Satanists in the so-called upper echelon of society compared with the general population, because these particular bloodlines are systematically possessed through the rituals. This is how it's done, to become conduits in this reality for that which is controlling them from another reality. So while all these people are having, you know, their sex with children, they are conduits for feeding these entities that energy. That's why pedophilia is everywhere. And what Jimmy Savile was doing, Alex, people in this country, the stories are broken. Oh, Savile was a record-breaking pedophile. And what they've done, the media, sometimes through pressure and fear of the consequences, but actually the authorities and the police have done, is hold that position. Savile was a record-breaking pedophile. The dike they don't want to break, and they're desperately holding on to, is that's part of the story, but only part.
He was Renfield. He was supplying them.
He was supplying politicians like Ted Heath, a man I exposed as a Satanist and child killer 7 years before he died, in a book. It was read to him, the passage was read days after it was published in 1997, 98. And he had 7 years to do something about it, and he never did anything about it. Why? Because it was true. Savile was also brought into the inner sanctum of the British royal family.
So they don't just rape kids, they slit their throats.
Oh, they do all. Well, that was a speciality of Heath, yeah.
Well, stay there. We're going to go to break right now, folks. All I can tell you is from my study, they're all into this, whether it's demons or whatever that are running them doing it. Christians say it's demons. He says it's something else. And
the same thing.
All the same thing. Same thing. We're going to come right back from break with Bilderberg Worldwide.
The government's Department of Homeland Security.
We're going to go 30 minutes into the next hour, and David Icke's going to be here with us. We're going to have his son, who works on the site and is really an informed person as well, joining us here on the broadcast. And I just want to be clear about this. I've had the biggest shows on BBC, Sky Television, you name it, call us, and they want us to come into town and, you know, be on their shows, and we may do that. But the point is that they would kill before not to admit Bilderberg even existed. And of course, we're like, here it exists. Here's their minutes. Here's declassified documents. The CIA helped set it up. It was a Hitler plan to put the whole of Europe under an economic dictatorship, the EU. Here's the name of it. I talked to the member of the EU Parliament. We aired that in the first hour, who exposed it. That's what's so frustrating, is that I know the Federal Reserve is private. I've read their charter. You can read it right now. It's public. You go to the Library in Congress and read it, not just online. I know the Bilderberg Group was founded in '54, but was actually around before that. I've had National Archive documents leaked to me. WikiLeaks has got them, but a lot of it's public. And the media sits there going, you believe it exists. BBC still tried that. The other media knew the jig was up, but they know they're lying to their viewers. It's about hearing, well, it doesn't exist, but I know it exists to make you feel small. It's about keeping that idea small. So whether it's demons, whatever it is, I can't prove any of that. I know that you don't get into these upper echelons of the elite unless you are into devil worship, hurting children. And I know every culture ends up being run by an elite that does that, when no one I know acts like that or believes like that. So regardless of what runs it, regardless, it's going on. And David Icke, how did you discover, all of this? Because you said you went to, I think it was Peru, by some standing stones and had a vision. And, I don't get into New Age type stuff. I don't even believe in all that. I went to Stonehenge and walked across a line thinking, oh, this is boring, and instantly felt energized. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to you on the show before about the fact that, this reality is a projection from an energetic information blueprint, a bit like wireless internet.
And you believe that scientists have found now that it's a computer program, that that's the hack.
Yeah, that's the hack. But the thing is that the energy that you felt, see, the Earth has an energy field. We all know that. Everyone accepts that. But it is interpenetrated with a network of lines. They're known in Britain as ley lines or meridian lines. These are lines of force. Now, where many of these lines cross, think of it as a web. It literally is a web of energy, electromagnetic energy. So where lots of them cross,
that's how birds navigate.
Yeah, well, yes. These are the electromagnetic.
By the way, it's now been proven that we all have these cells in our brain.
Yeah, these are the electromagnetic fields that they use to navigate, and so many other things happen that are called paranormal. The scientists, Stonehenge is a good one. Stonehenge is where the bloody scientists ought to be. That's where their minds are in terms of understanding reality as it really is. But the scientists kind of dismiss that. So they're going, this is a mystery. But when you understand you've got this unifying field which unifies everything, suddenly the paranormal becomes perfectly bloody logical. But where lots of these lines cross, a massive vortex of energy is created. And if you do things in that vortex, you affect the Earth's energy field in a much more powerful way.
By the way, I thought it was a joke, had forgotten it, was on the phone and walked across a line, and they kept going back, and my whole crew felt it.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing this.
Have you been there?
I've been loads of times. This is something I researched at great length years ago, and it's not New Age. Some people who do it you call themselves New Age. What it is simply understanding reality on a level that mainstream science does not understand and does not want to understand. Why? Because it's controlled by the same network, and the last thing that network wants the target population to do is understand the nature of the reality it's experiencing.
That's right. Going to break back in 60 seconds. And by the way, I did look it up. Guess what the Grove's on? The very same ley line.
You are listening to GCN.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I feel like I really know him well, and I did over the phone, talking to him for like 15 years on air. But David Icke is here in studio in Watford, England. People say Watford, some working class area. The Grove is incredibly beautiful, and it's got bizarre skeleton art all over it, and people being absorbed, losing their humanity, becoming machines. This is a short segment, David. We're going to get into a bunch of world news with you in the next segment, but you were starting to get into the royal family. They're constantly digging up dead bodies on their property. Diana put out a ledger and a video saying Charles will kill me in a fake auto accident. He told me he would. Then you have all of that. You have all this bizarreness where only the Queen can eat swans, no one else can. I mean, it's just blaringly obvious that you've got a criminal group of psychos in control, whatever they are, just getting away with bloody murder. How is it going for them?
Well, it's not going for them like it was, because people are becoming more and more irreverent. I mean, you know, I've had a stomach condition for the last, 60 years of my life, which gets me nauseous and wanting to throw up. And it's funny because every time I see the royal family doing one of their public rituals, that's when I get it. You know what I mean? And
it's about worshiping them.
Yes, they want to be worshipped. You know, you have this thing, you can't turn your back on the Queen. I wish I met her. You watched me. It's this this reverence they have, and we need to get irreverent with this system and not kind of bow to it, which is what they want. But what I was saying earlier, Jimmy Savile, child procurer to the elite, he was procuring children for Ted Heath on his yacht Morning Cloud from the now infamous children's home on Jersey. But he was, by his own words, introduced. This guy's a disc jockey. And in the end, he wasn't even that. But in his own words, he was introduced into the inner sanctum of the royal family by Lord Mountbatten in the 1960s, the mentor of Prince Philip and Prince Charles. And
he said to do favors. I can get them things.
Yeah, Mountbatten is a known paedophile. He was involved in paedophilia at places like the King Cora Boys Home in Belfast and what have you. And ask this question. Media, ask yourself this question. What is an aging disc jockey doing in the inner sanctum of the royal family, so close that by his own words, and I know this from other sources who were very close friends of Princess Diana for 9 years before she died, that he was asked by them to be the go-between and the mediator between Diana and Charles when their marriage was breaking down. What's going on? And I'll tell you how I knew about Savile. This is a very, very interesting story. In 1997, 98, I was asked to go to a little meeting at the House of Lords. I'd never even been into the House of Lords. I didn't know what I was going into. And it was just a small group of people. And we just had a chat in the afternoon. But there was somebody there who wasn't from the House of Lords who was saying some very interesting things about the death of Princess Diana. This was about 98, not long after it happened. And I called her over afterwards. I said, how do you know all that? And she says, well, my best friend was the best friend of Diana for 9 years. And they fell out about 2 years before Diana died. She said, I think she'll talk to you. A few weeks later, or days later, she arrives on the island where I live. And I've got all this on tape. It's still at home on tape. And she told me about... You
gotta air that.
Yeah, it's on one of those old tapes.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but this is the point. What she told me in 1998... was the way that the royal family treated Diana, that Jimmy Savile was on the inner sanctum of the royal family, and Princess Diana called him a sleazebag, and that he was a necrophiliac and...
Hold on. Well, I want to repeat all this and get to the rest of it when we come back from break. This is too powerful, and you're going to hear this type of stuff because I'm the craziest man in America, crazy like a fox to put the truth on the air. It's all come out, the necrophilia, everything. Everything has come out except the royal family. The question is...
You prepare by purchasing gold.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're back live with Spinal Tap bringing us in. We got David Icke here, meeting him in person for the first time ever, in the middle of just a globalist political bloodbath. You've got the New York Times saying Obama, let me get the exact headline, can no longer lead. He is completely discredited. And again, that's supposedly the paper of record. He's just a puppet now they're trying to discard. They think he can't get any more of an agenda through for him. You've got David Cameron, the prime minister, going to Bilderberg. I've never seen a president or prime minister during an event go to it. I guess they're like, fine, we're exposed. Bring him in publicly, because we've been there when presidents or prime ministers show up secretly and then our inside moles tell us. I want to get back into the royal family and tell a story here, David Icke, but we predicted that they would go quasi-public. Plus, I had some sources in the U.S. Senate, also in Hollywood. But then I talked to the big BBC guy, John Sargent, the big political reporter, and he basically was admitted to, he was admitted into the facility. I wasn't allowed to say it completely, so he kind of halfway said, well, one of us is, and it said, I'm going to enjoy my fancy special lunch today. And he was getting all excited about it. So hard to keep all these sources straight. The point is that they wanted to remain secret because what they're doing is illegal, setting policy. Now it's out in the open. What does it mean to have David Cameron go there?
Well, they're on a massive damage limitation operation now because the coverage, the understanding of its existence and what goes on there means that although, you know, even people on the BBC can still go, oh, no, all that stuff, never mind. You see, this is where we are, Alex. We're at a point now where great tracts of the public, the awakening public, are far more informed about the world and what's going on than the flipping journalists on the BBC, etc. You know, they're still in the land of the bewildered.
She was telling me it didn't exist still.
Yeah, well,
does she know what a buffoon? I mean, or is she trying to put people back in the box?
Well, you know, I think from my experience within the BBC is don't, and you know.
You were a national TV host on
yeah, and also so many other mainstream journalists, is never underestimate the level of ignorance. See, what you have with journalists is this combination which always kind of hunts in packs or hunts in pairs. It's arrogance and it's ignorance. The ignorance means they don't know their backside from their elbow in terms of what's going on in the world. But the arrogance means that if it was going on, then they would know about it because they're a journalist. And often they're, of course, the last people to know about it.
Jim Tucker admitted that he was arrogant and said, how dare you? There's nothing secret in politics. I'd know about that.
Yeah. Well, and
then he set out to expose it.
Yeah, but this is the thing. When you are a journalist and you think that because you're a journalist, you would know about it if it was this big, this is the point. They have no conception of what's happening in the world. What they do is they report dots. I mean, this is coming back to what you said earlier. They will report in The Independent that there's a massive explosion of cancer in Britain. Here, they will report something about vaccines. Here, they will report something about what's going on in politics. Here, they will do something about fluoride in water. What they don't do is bring the dots together so you can see the web, you can see the tapestry. They won't do that. And Bilderberg now are in a point where it's like being caught. You know, when you're doing something you shouldn't be doing in a bedroom or something. And suddenly the door opens and suddenly you're standing up and you're brushing yourself down. Oh, no, nice to see you. Nothing's going on. So
look, the Prime Minister's here.
Yeah. So now they're trying to go, oh, well, yeah, but it don't matter. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, we exist, yeah, but it doesn't matter. But the public are ahead of them. This is the point. The public are not going to accept this. They won't take this rubbish anymore on the scale that they have before.
Now, this is very controversial, folks, but everything he's talking about, because I'm a news hound, I know has been in the news. Everything up to the royal family, past that. But I mean, we'll just get into it.
The royal family?
Well, you wanted to get into.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
We're talking
about Savelle that you exposed a long time ago as a pedophile, which they admit was like the confidant to all the royals.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is that
a total kook, weirdo, scumbag, nobody hanging out with them constantly. What's going on?
Yeah, he speaks highly of you, mate. But he probably does now, wherever he is. Oh no, but anyway, what I was talking about.
Well, he just looks like a textbook pedophile.
Yeah, he does, because he was. But yeah, what I was saying earlier about this lady I met in 1998. She told me a number of things which later proved to be absolutely true. That was one of them. The rituals, the serious.
You met her at Parliament, yeah.
No, this was the friend of the person I met at Parliament who came to my house and I interviewed her on tape at length. Her name was Christine Fitzgerald. She was a friend of Diana and acknowledged to be so by the media for about 9 years. But what she told me about the rituals and what goes on at places like Balmoral Castle and all, was just beyond belief, but true. Now,
say it, tell it.
Well, I mean, literally sacrificing children, drinking their blood, and all that stuff that they go on.
Hey, I've been told by people that just went to Oxford who are famous, but I can't say their names, that they did devil worship and mass orgies.
Yeah, but it's the norm at that so-called level.
Oh no, that's low level.
Yeah, but. The thing is, it's far more prevalent than anyone believes. That's the trouble. But the thing is that what she told me was that, first of all, this is 1998, that she was an alternative healer, and Diana used to go to her for healing and stuff like that, because she had nobody else. She was just on her own in the middle of that Addams family, that evil Addams family we call the Windsors. Anyway, that what she called friendly people at MI5 were doing were leaving notes for Diana, knowing that when she came, she could pick them up. And one of these notes, this is why the Paul Burrell letter about, Diana saying that my husband is going to kill me in a car crash, that didn't surprise me at all. I'd heard about that years before, in the sense of these MI5 notes. Some of them were warning Diana that the royal family wanted her dead. Now, the royal family wouldn't kill people. Well, just hold on a second.
It was strangled twins.
Well, what happened when the marriage of Diana and Charles broke down is that she started having an affair with her bodyguard called Barry Manicky. She was apparently very, very much in love with the fella. Then Barry Manicky dies in a strange motorcycle accident in which he was basically garroted across the road and pulled off his bike and killed. Now, it was said...
And here's the headline, Daily Mail, Diana bodyguard killed for our affair.
Yeah. What the official story was that it was an accident. Anyway, this is what Christine Fitzgerald told me happened subsequently, sometime later. Diana came into her healing centre just near Regent's Park in London in an unconsolable state. She was sobbing, and it took some time to sit her down and calm her down and say, what's going on? Because as she was sobbing, Diana was shouting, they killed him, they killed him, they killed him. And what Diana then said is that earlier that day, hence the response, what she called Prince Charles's senior detective had said to her, because by this time, it's sometime after the death of the bodyguard, she was having an affair with a man, now out and accepted in the open, with a guy called Captain James Hewitt. And she said that what had happened is the senior detective of Prince Charles had just said to her that the affair with Hewitt had to end, and if it didn't, he could end up like Barry Manicky, which is the bodyguard that's supposed to have been an accident. He was telling her they killed her. He also said to her in the same conversation, and don't think that you're not expendable either. And Diana told her the story whereby when she'd first heard about Manicky, Barry Manicky, was when she was with Charles in a limo being driven to the steps of an airplane, and outside were all the paparazzi. And just as they were about to get out, she said, Charles leaned across and said, pity about your friend, wasn't it? And told her with a smile on his face and an irony in his voice that Barry Manicky had just died. And so they killed the guy. I mean, that's what happens. And at the same time, and this came out in the public arena as well, James Hewitt was being, he said in his own words, was being warned by what he called a senior member of the royal family that... And
tell folks who that is.
James Hewitt, he was the guy who had the affair later with Diana. And he said publicly that a senior member of the royal family had contacted him and said the affair must end, or in effect, they can't be, they can't say what the consequences would be. In other words, he was being threatened in the same way. The royal family, the Windsors, are an evil intergenerational bloodline with human and non-human DNA and hearts of frickin' stone.
Well, folks, this is Light Listening here with David Icke today. I'm your host, Alex Jones. Big Bilderberg breakdown coming up.
Wouldn't it be nice to have one product that replaces...
It's the final segment with David Icke, but we'll have live streams tomorrow night at Infowars.com/Bilderberg, and also at DavidIcke.com. They're going to have live streams if ours go down or have problems. And if theirs have problems, you can go to our streams. But DavidIcke.com David wants to speak before me at 5 o'clock. I speak at like 6, but I want him to go longer, so I'll speak at 6:30 or so. I'm just going for 30 minutes. They're at the Grove overlooking where the globalists are meeting. Believe me, they're very upset by this. They don't like it. But I drug him in here because I knew he was in the newsletter. He helped run DavidIcke.com. Gareth Icke, who is David Icke's son, I thought he'd have the premiere here on our radio show. Buddy, what is it like having a dad like this?
It's interesting. For one thing, it's not regular, but it's good. It's great because it gives me the freedom to try and be myself as well.
Well, you're an accomplished musician. Tell us about some of the work you're doing and your view on Bilderberg.
Well, to be honest, I was a musician for a long time, and I was trying, like all young people do, is to try and break into the industry and try and make it, whatever making it means. And then I found out from the inside just how corrupt and just how bent the whole industry is, which kind of freaked me out a bit, to be honest, because obviously, Dad's been talking about this stuff for a long time, but to actually see it, I was offered £100,000 on my first album to take the album as an advance, based on me changing my surname and saying basically I didn't agree with anything that Dad had ever said. I was offered it there on a plate, and obviously told them to stick it up their arse, obviously. But that kind of woke me up a bit. And now, the music industry is so corrupt that all the musicians are, and it's the same at Bilderberg because there's lots of musicians around as well. There's some really, really top-notch musicians that are turning their back on the establishment and on the music industry and doing it on their own. And I'm happy to be part of that. It's great, making noise.
And give people your website.
It's just GarethIcke.com. I'm normally talking rubbish on there, but it's all good fun. And there's loads of songs on there too. GarethIcke.com. And in closing, I'm going to come back with all the news, folks, all the info in the next 30 minutes I haven't gotten to yet. David, we're talking about how they try to intimidate us, and when we don't fear them, then they are pathetic. What is the key, in closing, in about 3 minutes to defeat these people?
Well, if I could just say very quickly, Alex, this fella was at school when the ridicule of me was at its peak, and he went through a nightmare at school as a kid, being ridiculed day after day after day, and he's still sitting by my side. This is one hell of a bloke, I'll tell you, and he's a fantastic musician. But
they're not laughing now.
No, they're not laughing. No, well, the bloody media are laughing, but I mean, again, they're
laughing to themselves.
Yeah, well,
when they attack us, it's an endorsement.
The thing is, they've got, I feel for them, bless them, because they've got to come to terms with the fact that they've been reporting the world in a completely inaccurate way all their careers, and the people they've been ridiculing have been people that have been doing the job that they should have been doing but aren't. For me, if you can get to Watford tomorrow, if you can get to the Grove Hotel and join us, please come.
Oh, yeah, and the police are trying to divert you away. I'll tell you after David leaves, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's very important to listen to what Alex says after the break, because they're trying to do everything they can to stop people getting there and to make it as difficult as possible. Please, let's come in numbers. Let's smile in their face, and let's do what is necessary to make a massive statement in numbers. Absolutely looking across at the place where it's all going on. Please make the effort.
What would your dad say? How about 3 generations? What would your dad say looking down on you right now?
Well, my father was someone who was highly intelligent and a rebel, but of course didn't know anything of this was going on. And, I tell you what my father did, Alex. He said to me when I was a little kid, I never forgot it. He said, "You're never finished in life until you sit down and say to yourself, I'm finished. Until you get to that point, no one can stop you." And I remembered that through the ridicule years, and I remember it now because, this is a great weekend, and it's a great step forward, but my goodness, have we got some work to do in the years ahead. Massive. But that stuck with me and got me through so much. And this kid, I tell you, this fella went through hell as a child because of the abuse of his father. And the fact that he's still going and so successful, I'm so proud of this boy, I can't tell you. And my other kids as well, Kerry and Jamie.
Hey, I got to tell you, David Icke, it's great meeting you in person after all these years, and we've missed each other a few times narrowly, but here we are now, and tomorrow speaking outside the Grove. Everybody should be there. This is historic, and you're doing great work getting people to think outside the box. David Icke.
Yeah, you too, mate.
All right. Great to meet you. We'll be right back after the break, folks. Stay with us. You can say what you want about David Icke, but now that I've met him in person, I can tell you that guy believes everything he's saying, and just so much of it continues to come out. It's like, oh, he's not right about this, is he? Because I'm blindsided by the corruption of the globalists. I'm blindsided by how out of control they are. I want to get some news updates from David Knight here in about 5 minutes. I know he's been riding shotgun to give us his take on what's happening and also cover some more of the news. But it was very interesting this morning. Seems like a million years ago at 6 a.m. when I got up, Britain time. I guess that's midnight Texas time. That I've been spending the last 3 days telling police they're putting cancer viruses in your vaccine. You know about government secret testing. You know about Portendown here in the UK. You know about plague bombs released over Scotland. You know about all this evil stuff. They're putting cancer viruses in the vaccines. I know you and your family are getting cancer. Look this up. Then I get up at 6 a.m. and I go down to have breakfast. And there's the London Independent. Half of Britons alive in 2020 will get cancer. And it says, but don't worry, the government's going to have science to try to treat it. Instead of, why is it exploding? And we know it's a cornucopia of reasons. We know it's wide spectrum, but bisphenol A, fluoride, GMO, microwave radiation. And you look at the graph, that's only 6.5 years away now. I mean, they're talking about by 2020, 1 in 10 kids being autistic. And by the way, that's not overdiagnosis. That's just a name of a brain-damaged kid that covers hundreds of things. It's kind of a catch-all. It's not an overdiagnosis. And, I mean, I just have empathy for all these people, and I have empathy for myself. I want all the life extension technologies. I will quote Roy Batty when he talks to Tyrell, the head of the Tyrell Corporation. You know, I want more life, and I want more life right now. Come on in, bro. Did you forget something? Oh, awesome. Be safe. There goes David Icke's son. I tell you, that guy looks like a Calvin Klein model. The ladies around here were getting pretty excited, let me tell you. Anyways, David Icke's son, man, what a trooper. And David Icke himself. All right, continuing. David Icke's son just came in. He forgot some of his stuff. He had a whole camera crew in here with him. It is to know what I know that's proven, written in books by these people. It upsets me. David Knight?
Yeah, Alex. Hey, guys, can you get me on? Hello?
Absolutely. He's on. I can hear you. I thought I heard you pop in from it. That's why I went to you.
No, they had me on talkback here, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it's one of the things we said earlier is that people need to take control of their life. They have the capability to do some of this just with the products that we're selling that help to pay for this operation, with the Survival Seed Bank, where you can get seed that hasn't been genetically modified, where you can get filters to filter your water. People have to start working at the local level, and it's going to be difficult. They fight us on trying to get the fluoride out of the water, but you can do it in your own home. I don't know if you're aware of this, Alex, but they had a sheriff that we're covering that story on the nightly news. They had a sheriff who was arrested and taken out of office because he didn't go through with some gun charges that he didn't agree with on a person who was arrested.
Oh, no, exactly. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because that story was up yesterday evening, and I meant to cover it. Why don't you pull the article up and cover that as soon as you get that article in your hand, and then I'll get into my Bilderberg news here, because I was just seeing David off as the break ran out, and I'm desperately trying to look at all my articles here and focus on what I want to get to. On the road, it's not as easy as being back at the old Infowars Command Center in good old Austin, Texas. But expanding on that, 870-something cities, last time I checked, are sanctuary cities, and let illegal aliens drunk drive, hit and run, commit crimes. They release them. Austin, Texas is one. But then a sheriff arrests somebody brings them in on a gun charge that was not by a felon, that was victimless, that he believed was unconstitutional, and so he lets them go without charging them, which is what you're supposed to do. You know, the jury, the grand jury, those are votes. The police. If something's unconstitutional, if it's a victimless crime, they shouldn't be stretched the law to try to throw somebody in jail. And now they've arrested him because God forbid the elected sheriffs and God forbid the states and the counties go, you know what, you want to nullify the Constitution, stuff that's actually constitutional, laws that are constitutional, you want to nullify that and let the Federal Reserve on record launder over $300 billion of drug money a year, and let Wachovia and Wells Fargo launder drug money and run the drug aircraft. And when they get caught because good agents blow the whistle, those agents get fired, and then they get a get out of jail free card.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then you're going to ask me if I'm using drugs. So it's the same thing. This is not a cop letting somebody get away with something. It's not constitutional to arrest somebody for a gun in their car when you're in a state that doesn't even have a law saying that. Go ahead.
That's right. They're allowing, as you pointed out, sheriffs across the country to exercise their discretion to violate law. And here's a sheriff exercising his discretion to not violate the Constitution. And he's the one who's taken out of office, I would add, by a Republican governor there in Florida.
Well, if you have the article, cover it right now. And we need to try to help this guy. I want him on. I want a legal defense fund. We need to run him for governor and get rid of that pig governor they've got in there.
Well, absolutely. We talked, Jakari was here, and we talked just before you came in with David Icke. And we're following through on that. We're going to be talking to the Constitutional Sheriff's Association. And, of course, at this point, we can't talk to the sheriff directly because he's facing charges. So we would have to talk to a lawyer to find out exactly what's going on there. But the amazing thing about it is that this person who was simply charged with some kind of a carry violation would have been facing a felony. Now the sheriff who did not prosecute him over this law that you could argue is a clear violation of the Constitution, the sheriff who did not prosecute him over that, now the sheriff is being charged with a felony, taking his place. I mean, like you said, we need to do something we can to support the sheriff to stand with him.
Here's the deal. We ask sheriffs and we ask police and we ask governors and legislators and city councilmen and women to do the right thing. And then when they do the right thing and the globalists come after them, we have got to put everything behind them. I'm sick of telling people in government that it's their job to follow the Constitution when we won't back them up. The reason they don't follow it is because when they do, they're overrun. So it is imperative, when I saw that article yesterday, that we get him a legal defense fund, that we support him, because it's the bare minimum, okay? It's getting down to that. We cannot ask people to walk point and go the extra mile if we don't back them. That is hypocritical, and I'm telling you, it makes me absolutely get angry. I'm so sick of people that call me and say, let's start a shooting war. Let's start killing people. And I go, really, who do we kill? Who do we start with? Well, you lead it. I'm like, no, I'm going to try to win the info war on the offense and the defense. If they start a fight offensively, I'll defensively defend myself. And if it starts, Katie bar the door. But I'm not stupid enough to think that's some great, wonderful thing. That is a last resort of defense. I'm not going to a FEMA camp. But don't call me and say you're not a man because you're not leading an armed insurrection when you're calling me to do it.
Absolutely. You know, we've got a situation here where Obama has violated the Constitution once we find out about it, for every single person in the United States, because it's not just Verizon. They're going to be.
He's not just violating the Constitution. He's robbing all of us of our birthright and our privacy and using the info to enslave us, as the headline says, to know what we're thinking as we type it. They're robbing our privacy. I have nothing to hide in bed with my wife at night watching TV, but I want my privacy because I'm a free human being, and privacy is what it's about to be a free human being. And I'm sick of people saying, what do you have to hide? What do you have to hide, Bilderbergs?
You know, what I want to see is I want to see some congressmen, some senators bringing impeachment charges. This is a major scandal every day. They impeached Nixon. They went after Kissinger because they wiretapped journalists, about 17 of them during Watergate. This is the entire country. And they have the audacity to stand up there and say they've got legal safeguards in place, that we don't have to worry about this. That's just ridiculous.
Hey, I want you to write today, right now, go in there with Kurt and Emma. Let's put a White House petition up for Obama to resign.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, it is now time for Obama to resign. I mean, I'm looking at this, and this is what I meant to get with David Icke, but he got off into a bunch of other stuff, which was very informative. But this is what I want to ask you, David Knight, right now. And then I want to get into that sheriff's name, and because I don't have the article in front of me. I read it last night, and who he is and where he is and how we can support him, so our Florida listeners especially can try to get in there and just absolutely put as much pressure as they can on that corrupt governor for this miscarriage of justice they're trying to carry out against this person that just acted like a cop famously at a New York airport let citizens film the TSA and said, you have a right to, which is federal law and TSA policy. And the sheriff's deputy that was there as security became an internet hero just because he said, no, they have a constitutional right to film, when the head of the airport said, you will tell him I'm the head of the airport. And then he whispers to him, listen, I'm the boss, better do what I say. And the guy looks at him, he goes, the Constitution's the boss. See, when we get rid of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, due process, checks and balances, we're all wide open and naked, folks. When somebody tries to steal your rights, it's worse than stealing your car. It's worse than stealing your house. It's like stealing your children's future. In fact, that's what it is. You got to take it personal. And I see the spiritual line we're crossing, and I think we're winning by like 5% right now, but it's touch and go. That as they admit the spying and the torture and the secret arrest and that they run Al-Qaeda. I didn't even get to this today, but I'm going to get to it in a minute. As all of this goes on, as all of this happens, as all of this unfolds, if we don't send them to jail, if people don't get in trouble, if the pendulum doesn't swing back the other way, when all of this is coming out, everything we told you about, it was on record decades ago. Now the media is ready to admit it. Now the people won't buy into it anymore. Now it's backfiring on them, so they're having to admit it. Absolutely. If we let them just kind of get away with this, they've now set the precedent to go all the way. So I want to ask you about that, but then I'm going to add this right now. Last night, I went to bed at about midnight England time, and I was laying there in bed, and I had my iPhone out, and I typed in Bilderberg coverage, and for some reason, an article pulled up about Glenn Beck. It was in the Huffington Post, and then I went to another article about it. It had the transcript, and I said, that can't be true. And I went and I clicked on it, and I went and watched the video, and I sent it to the guys. I think they have it. They can tell me later if they do. I sent it to them like last night. And it was Glenn Beck saying that basically Alex Jones is threatening his life, and that how dare Rachel Maddow compare him to me and conspiracy theorist, and that he's never said that the government was involved in.
We just lost transmission there.
Al-Qaeda publicly.
There we go.
I'm sorry, David.
We lost transmission there for a second. You said that.
Okay, but I'm back. I'm back now.
Yeah, you're back now.
The point is that I never called for violence against Glenn Beck. I challenge anybody to find video of that. Or me even saying, I'll get in a boxing ring with him like I did with O'Reilly as a joke because he's a known bully. But when you've got Rachel Maddow, Bill O'Reilly, Glenn Beck, CNN, the whole crew, and the White House attacking you, you're doing the Lord's work. But I got to tell you, that clip is really creepy. To try to imply that about me, which is definitely defamation, to try to turn people against me, it shows the power structure is upset about this broadcast. It shows that because they know I'm real, they've got my phones tapped, because they know I'm honorable. I'm not perfect, but I try to be a good person, because they know I have the light of liberty in my heart that can set brush fires in the minds of men and women, and then they can spread it. Because I have the torch of liberty, just as all of you do, they're scared of that, David Knight. And I'm saying we're at that event horizon. We're at that point right here, whether we either wake up, say no, reverse the tide, send Obama to prison, man. And people say, well, he's just a puppet. Yeah, but he went further than anybody. They tried to roll it out as trendy and cool. America rejected it. unless his whole group of arrogant crooks get indicted, at bare minimum impeached, or they have the sky as the limit and there is no due process and we know we're screwed. David Knight, do you agree on that point? I mean, how do you quantify that if we don't reverse things, not all the way, but just turn the tide now,
absolutely,
and punish people, then it's a precedent. It's like we either turn it back now, we're at the cliff, we're at that spiritual cliff, and that's why people are saying no now. They get this is the cliff.
Well, there is a key thing there, and that is if you go back to the American Revolution, they had a slogan, Lex Rex. In other words, the law is king. No king but Jesus. You know, that was returning back to moral principles and the rule of law rather than the rule of men. You had Max Kaiser on yesterday. He had some great comments about some parallels to Versailles and the end of World War I and how they put this unjust burden, economic burden, and destroyed the German people, and that fomented into World War II. And he had some parallels to today, the way the bankers' debt was unfairly put on the rest of the public and became a sovereign debt, the way they socialized the losses. But I sensed from him that he had a real concern about Christians bringing back in something about the divine rights of kings. But, you know, we had a revolution, both with the Reformation, there's ecclesiastical revolution, and then later on with the Great Awakening, where they repudiated the idea that men were going to be in charge and set up moral principles and moral laws as being in charge. And we still have that today. That Christianity, rightly understood, is what brought about the American Revolution. And we have the rule of law where we have our elected officials are nothing more than stewards. Just like you've got, going back to the Lord of the Rings, Denethor, who was the steward, and became the person who wanted to be the king and not just a steward. And that's what we're seeing today.
George Washington was offered the kingship, and when King George III heard he turned it down, he said he's the greatest man who's ever lived.
That's right. That's right.
Because today, nobody ever turned down kingship but Jesus Christ.
But today we have people who are elected as stewards who swear obedience to the Constitution because it is the higher authority, and they act as if they are ruling by the divine right of kings. They act as if they are a king, as if they are a god, and they have reputed everything in the Constitution. We're not talking about journalists who had their phone records turned over. That created quite a stir, and rightfully so when we saw that with the AP. But they did the same thing now to every Verizon customer, and the truth be known, they've done it to everyone.
It's now admitted that they were spying on everybody with the third biggest company in the country with over 100 million customers.
And that was just yesterday.
100 million homes.
And that was just yesterday. Today it breaks out about all of the data spying that's going on, not just phone records. So
meanwhile, Petraeus, articles at Infowars.com and right-hand side of DrugsReport.com, Petraeus is meeting to try to sell the idea of the NSA Google takeover when he himself was destroyed with them spying on his records and emails with his girlfriend. What business is it who General Petraeus is dating? I'm not endorsing what he did, but I mean, the FBI was spying on the head of the CIA. I mean, this guy is endorsing the noose that hung him. We'll be right back with more Bilderberg news. I'm live from London.
Hello, this is Steve Shank.
I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that you are not going to do bad things to get away with them. Even if you don't believe in God, the wicked always want to say that there's no God. Look, let's just admit there's evil in this world and there's good, and that it feels better to do good, and it also builds a better society. But to be able to do good, you have to learn what good is. And so many people that serve corruption and serve darkness, they really think they're doing good. You know, look at these articles. There's one up on the side. It's Alex Jones infiltrates the Grove Hotel by boat. Alex Jones sensationally, and I appreciate that, Blair, but it really wasn't even so much sensationally. We found a loophole in their fencing and everything with these tour services on boats. The famous English waterways they used to use like roads in the 17, 18, 1900s. So we go right by the hotel, right as the prime minister's arriving. There's like helicopters and stuff landing, and I'm bullhorning them. They just freaked out. Because instead of being 300, 400 yards away, I was right up on it. We got a bunch of those videos coming up. David Knight's going to do a 4th hour of Overdrive at Infowars.com /Bilderberg or Infowars.com /
Hey, Alex, I think we lost you there.
We're going to air
David's.
Okay, we're going to air some of the stuff in overdrive in the next hour at Infowars.com/Bilderberg or Infowars.com/show, and some stations carry it. My interview with the Huffington Post was pretty powerful, a Channel 4 interview. I've got a David Icke interview that was even more powerful than what he said on air out there. I'll try to upload that to YouTube so you can have that by the end of the hour. But there'll be a lot of stuff up on Infowars.com. I don't really know what to say right now other than they didn't want coverage. It is a orgy of coverage. It is wall-to-wall crazy coverage, and they're being forced to admit that they're setting policy in secret. So now they're going from denying it existed to just trying to hide it in plain view. And when we find out, the public finds out, that $85 billion of U.S. taxpayer money a month goes to foreign bankers to bail out crises they created and to line their pockets, and that some of these people are worth hundreds of billions, but they leverage trillions. When they say Bill Gates is worth 80 billion, the richest guy, folks, that's pure bull. You know, these people are pretty much tax exempt. When you look at what they're doing, you understand that they are leveraging it all to create a tyranny, to bring in eugenics, and that they wouldn't even pay for the £2 million for the fence and the security. That's like $3.5 million. I mean, that's like a quarter in my pocket, okay? Couple $1 million to them. And I've now had a chance, I'm just going to leave it at this, to talk to inside sources that aren't just government sources, which is incredible sources this year. Media, government, so much is coming over the weekend. That's all I can tell you. And we've got stuff that just, I can't even believe how sensational, I can't even believe how over the top, some of this information is.
Well, Alex,
but they are treating the staff so horribly. Go ahead.
You're going to have a Bilderberg festival there tomorrow. Now, live coverage is going to continue live on the internet at Infowars.com/B for Bilderberg. There's going to be a Bilderberg festival. What time is that going to start tomorrow, your time? Is that 5 o'clock, your time?
Yeah, it'll really start cranking up about 11 to noon Central, or noon to 1 Eastern at Infowars.com. But we've got bombshell info that is so big, and I'm so busy, I haven't even gotten into collating, that'll be up on Infowars.com tomorrow and the next day, and obviously at great places like DrudgeReport.com. David Icke, great job. I hope you'll take some calls, too, in the next hour before you even get to some of these interview clips we just did a few hours ago out there on the grassy knoll over that. Great job, crew.
Thank you for listening to GCN.
All right, I'm going to get out of here, folks, so that I can go finish some work I'm doing. It's 2 o'clock Central over there, 3 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock over here. I'm going to go finish a bunch of work and try to get my mind around all the big breaking insider intel, police, famous BBC people giving us key info. Bilderberg reportedly had a couple big, at BBC and somebody else in yesterday and today to tape interviews. I don't know if those are going to air, but media was going in. So I got to write that down. See, I've got to just think about all the stuff I got to give my writers here that we witnessed in the sources. So media went in. Are they holding stories? That's a report. And then we've also got insiders inside that they knew that we were in there talking to the crew that worked there, so that when the people were so mean to them that they'd talk to us. So we've got inside sources that way. And we've got the big speeches tomorrow. And really the big overwhelming story here is there's such massive national, international, transnational coverage of this. And most of it is pretty serious coverage. It's not simpering and arrogant. Only the BBC, and I did like 6 or 7 of those in the last 2 days. I did like 5 or 6 yesterday and a couple today. Only some of the BBC were like, it doesn't exist. It isn't real. And I'm like, of course it's real. Why are you saying that? I'm trying to make you angry. Ha, ha, ha. So just amazing things going on here, David Knight. David, what's coming up in the next segment?
Well, we've got a interview that you did yesterday with someone. You were talking about the NSA and the Project Prism. And we're going to be playing that in the next segment. That's an excellent interview there. And we've got some other interviews that you've got, and we're going to be taking some phone calls and ask people what they think about this massive criminal actions by our government that's now been exposed in the mainstream media. We've been talking about it. We've been telling people that it's there. We've had whistleblowers talking about it. Now it's been released. We've seen the documents. We've even got the New York Times writing editorials talking about how the president has now lost all credibility on this issue, although they later struck that particular statement. but it's still a scathing indictment of Obama. And the question is, when are our congressmen going to indict him for crimes? This is far more pervasive than anything that Nixon ever did. Nixon was rightfully
indicted. Yeah, we need to beat
indicted.
that drum. That's why the power structure is trying to race to the finish line right now, because they want to kill the Tea Party. That's why you see the Republican Party and all these establishment people like Tucker Carlson and Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly coming out against Infowars.com, along with Rachel Maddow and CNN and MSNBC and all of them, because the old power structure's dying.
Well, don't forget National Review. Don't forget National Review. They basically, they come after you. They even threw Republican congressmen under the bus about this DHS ammo situation, even though we linked to the RFPs from the DHS on that.
I know. So they're desperately trying to keep us on the reservation. They're using the same old tricks of denying all this exists. And all I want's a free country. All I want's a future for my children. They are buying thousands of armored vehicles. They are training for war with us. The manuals are public. They are buying billions of bullets. And now Glenn Beck is resorting to saying that I'm threatening to try to kill him or death threat him. And, you know, he may try to use some fake email some stalker sent, you know, or some joke, but it just shows they're getting really desperate. They want me demonized. They want Infowars.com demonized, because they know we're telling the truth. And we'll just have continued coverage tomorrow on Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.com and on the YouTube channels, and, of course, here at Prisonplanet.tv. And tell everybody you know, folks, on Twitter, Facebook, you name it. Follow us at Real Alex Jones to be sure and spread the word about the broadcast from the Bilderberg meeting tomorrow. David Icke's coming back with the Huffington Post interview. We'll announce which interview is which. We're coming back with some of the BBC interviews, with some of the Channel 4 interviews I did with me today. All of this and your phone calls and a ton more. Stay with us.
We've just had Alex Jones live from London. I'm David Knight, standing in for him here back in Austin. But we do have some interviews that Alex has done in London yesterday. We have one about the breaking crisis with the NSA, Verizon, and the PRISM scandal that was breaking yesterday and today. Every day, we're finding out new information about new areas of our life where the government is spying on every single thing we do. And Alex has been talking about this for quite some time, just like he's been talking about Bilderberg. Now people are seeing it for themselves. We see secret documents being released, and we've got a video coming up right here, and we're going to be taking your calls afterwards to talk about some of this. The number to call is 800-259-9231. That's 800-259-9231. We're going to be taking calls, and we're going to be looking at some of Alex's interviews that have been happening in London. Right now, this is an interview that he had about the Verizon and the data leakage charges. So here we go.
It's been our job and our main goal just to expose there are powerful lobbying groups and organizations like Bilderberg above government that are transnational that come in and basically lobby governments to give them corporate bailouts, to buy weapons systems. There's all sorts of collusion going on here. There were Lockheed Martin investigations in the 70s. That's why the founder, Prince Bernhard, had to step down. There's just all sorts of shady goings on, price fixing, you name it. Over the years, via WikiLeaks, but before that, even the BBC and others broke a lot of news out of Bilderberg where they were indeed inside setting policy. And they've refused Freedom of Information Act request as well, saying that policy is being made. But then the Bilderberg group separately says policy is not being made. The Bilderberg group is basically a world shadow government. It is a legendary organization within government, within people in Congress and your parliament. They all know about it. They all lust to be invited because if you get invited here, you end up being president or prime minister. But then, meanwhile, they tell the public it doesn't exist. Well, in the past, the New York Times just 4 years ago said that I was in Chantilly at a Bilderberg meeting covering it, and that it was imaginary, that I imagined helicopters and Secret Service and black vehicles. And they told their readers that I had a full-on insane breakdown and that it didn't exist. But we had all the YouTube videos. I made a film that was seen more than 40 million times online, The Obama Deception, showing it all, so they were discredited. So I've never seen such a news blackout as we have in the United States. It's been better here, but the dam has broken on the blackout of Bilderberg. You've got your prime minister coming here today. That shows that they've gone from trying to be secret so they're not under the light of publicity to now saying, okay, we're no big deal. We're kind of like a G20 meeting.
It's a curious coalition here. Not everybody's going to agree with some of your, say, your politics as stated in America on other issues. I mean, there's some fairly left-wing voices here. You're hardcore libertarian. How do you map through those differences?
Well, I'm really a populist who does believe in libertarian ideas when they're actually brought forth from the grassroots. And so
there's loads of left-wingers here who probably thought Obama was a bit of a hero. You don't agree with those guys, do you?
Hey, let me ask you, you think Obama's a hero? No. Hey, do you think George Bush is a hero? Okay, no. People are fed up. They know the system is a fraud. They know it's a scam. They know there's people above prime ministers and presidents that are pulling the strings. We want to talk about the puppeteers, not the puppets. And that's what's happening, is really an end of the naivety. What we're seeing happen is an end of the incredible naivete of the general public to actually believe the media and the government when they say there's no secret rooms, there's no manipulation going on. When there's been
not secret anymore, is it?
No, but they tried to keep it secret. They tried to have media they controlled for decades say it didn't exist, or now that it doesn't have any power, or those of us that criticize it are conspiracy theorists. When we've gotten their minutes, we know they created the European Union as a system to implode countries under corporate governance. We know that they lobbied years before for the Iraq War I and Iraq War II and tried to create the climate so that those wars would happen. This is about as evil as you get on this planet. This is a global corporate government that is trying to take over the entire planet. They're not in full control yet, but they are a world government that is basically learning to walk right now, and it wants to run.
Right now, on the day that this meeting's happened, we've had this story that the National Security Agency in your country, in America, has got access to all sorts of US data, tech company data. Some of the tech bosses are in there. What's your kind of response to that development? Do you trust data in your own country from these large tech companies?
For 18 years on air, I've exposed that all communications in the Western world, whether it's the EU, the UK, or the United States, run through hubs and are recorded. In the old days, it was just text, they say. This is all in Congress. The media just wouldn't touch it because we're free countries. We're not recording you. And now they come out and say, you know what, we've audio recorded everything you've said the last decade, so watch it. This is the establishment coming out and saying, you bet we're listening, and you bet if you criticize us, the IRS is going to come and we're going to audit you. So sit down and shut up, peasants. That's what's happening. And I was called a conspiracy theorist on national U.S. TV. Alex Jones says the government's spying on you without warrants and recording your phone calls. When it was in the Telecommunications Act of 1996, $9 billion to fund the upgrade of huge computer hubs in all telecommunications to record everything. They have giant NSA bases down the street from my house in Austin, Texas. They have a huge one in San Antonio, 60 miles away. They have them in every state, giant compounds with black helicopters and men with guns and machine guns recording everything. And if you go and put a camera on it, they come out and arrest you. And then the media won't cover it because those bases don't exist. They're right next to a Walmart in San Antonio. Thousands of acres, giant compounds, helicopters, men with masks on. None of it exists. And then I'm going, it exists. They're like, crazy man. There's no NSA. There's no spying. There's no torture. There's no corruption. The government loves you. Everything's fine. Here's Morgan cares about you. I'm here to tell everybody something right now. I'm here to tell all the globalists and all the sellouts. The answer to your 1984 tyranny is 1776! 1776! 1776! 1776! And by the way, 1776 is not about America versus England. The Parliament almost voted to give freedom to the colonies, and the king came down and demanded they declare war. The fight in the colonies was a 1,000-year war they'd had in these isles for freedom in England, in Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales. everywhere. It's a human fight for the Magna Carta that Tony Blair, when he first got elected, declared he would kill. That is treason. You want to know why you're a slave? They're trying to kill your Magna Carta, your due process, so they're above the law. And that's why we're here. The New World Order is not above the law. And liberty is rising!
Right now, though, Facebook, Apple, Google, YouTube, Skype, it's just been revealed that almost all of those networks have a back passage, as it were, in from the US government, from the NSA. What would you say to individuals in terms of what this means about the relationship with the state?
Google is the state. Facebook is the state. Google was set up with funding from In-Q-Tel and the CIA. That's mainstream news. But government has more scrutiny on it than private corporations, so they set up these subgroups under it so that they can then claim that they have corporate deniability. Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of them serve the global corporate interest. They're spying on everybody. Google's on record driving around with Google cars, stealing everyone's data, breaking into passcodes. Meanwhile, you do that with some cops, you go to jail in the UK. That's just because the low-level cops aren't supposed to get into the big-time game of spying on people, hacking phones. You hack phones, you go to jail. You spy on everybody illegally, well, they make you king.
Do you have a problem with them using this technology to root out security problems?
The Al-Qaeda threat is run by the globalists. They created them on record. They ran them in Libya. They run them in Syria. The New World Order is staging the bombings in India. It's provocateuring the bombings here. It is going out and finding mentally ill people in every case, even the New York Times reports. And they're totally discredited, but they have to admit that our government has created over 100 fake terror attacks by going out and finding mentally ill people. They use the pretext of a terror threat to spy on everyone, and now it turns out it's to spy on constitutionalists, nationalists, people that love freedom. Members of Congress are being spied on by the NSA. Why? Because they're Al-Qaeda? No. Big Brother uses the excuse of Al-Qaeda that they run to take our liberty. And we're now at a critical crossroads because all this is coming out. And if people make the decision collectively to say, well, that's okay, then we go deep into tyranny. We're at that crossroads where all this open evil either wakes us up and we reverse the pendulum from tyranny back to liberty, or we just kind of give into it and go, okay, Bob got disappeared because, he might have been a security threat, or, yeah, they're spying on you. That's to keep us safe. This is pure classical authoritarianism, and it has come to the United States. It has come to England. It has come to Europe.
Well, you seem to have won the argument amongst this audience, but the masses don't seem to care about their privacy being taken.
You don't speak for the masses.
I don't speak for them, but I'm saying by evidence, they seem to put whatever, all of their personal data on Facebook for free forever. All of the tweets seem to be going out
because
there.
They were promised by Google and all of them that they weren't saving it. But now that they're discovering that they were lied to, they are becoming angry. And the average person is doing nothing wrong, so they feel like, well, that's okay, the government's nice. But now they find out the government's corrupt and run by piratical interest, and now people are upset saying, I don't want you to have my data.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Ready to go? Yeah, we're late.
All right, that's Alex Jones yesterday at Bilderberg with an interview talking about data and the stealing of it, the stealing of the American people's data. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk to Gordon in London about what he thinks about that. We'll be right back after this break with more from the Alex Jones Show. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, standing in for Alex, and we are in overdrive. We're going to take some of your calls. We just had an interview that that was conducted yesterday. We just aired in the last segment. And one of the things that stuck out about that to me when Alex was talking to the interviewer, he said, we want to talk about the puppeteers and not the puppets. And that's really true. But unfortunately, that's not what you typically see in the media. We just had an article go up today that was a transcript from yesterday's Rush Limbaugh show. And he said the U.S. press is blaming George Bush for Obama's unprecedented eavesdropping. Now, that's true. The eavesdropping is unprecedented in both scope and scale. But it is the mainstream media is blaming Bush, many of them. Some of them, like the New York Times, is actually going after Obama. But Rush wants to deflect criticism onto Obama. We know that what they're doing here is they're just playing partisan politics. Rush wants to go after Obama. Many others in the media want to go after Bush. Let's agree that they were both problems. Let's agree that these problems are systemic. Let's talk about the fact that we've got James Clapper, who's head of the NSA, who lied to Congress, lied to the Senate in testimony in March, saying they weren't doing this sort of thing. They are violating even FISA and the Patriot Act. Those, in turn, violate our Constitution. Where's Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity in terms of getting rid of the Patriot Act and FISA, which these people unlawfully have enacted, unconstitutionally enacted, to give them access to do things? But now they've gone even beyond that. They've even exceeded that unconstitutional authority they've granted to themselves. Let's go to Gordon in London. You've been waiting for a while, Gordon. What do you think about all of this and about Bilderberg?
Well, this is just an amazing breakthrough for as far as I can see, I hope, for the Western world. There's no doubt about it. It's a real opportunity for people to really wake up and start taking back their rights in the Western world, not just America. And unfortunately, Americans do seem to be bearing the brunt of their liberty being taken away from them. I've been watching an awful lot on the internet, largely from Alex. I just cannot believe what an amazing job he's doing.
Well, let me tell you, Gordon, I appreciate that. Let me tell you, they're spying on you too. It's Americans who are doing it, but they're not just spying on every American. They're spying on you too. That was the whole point with FISA. They asserted that they had the right to record all of your phone conversations. It's just that they said, we're not doing it to Americans. And now it comes out, as we all knew, they were actually doing it to Americans. And they're not only looking at who you're calling and when you're calling, they are saving the content, and they're going to put it in the data center there in Utah. So it's not just us sharing this too, but we've got to fight it here. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go for it. I mean, I understand that. I'm not ignorant to this. I've worked, and they're probably listening to me now because I've worked in as a servant to very senior people in a very large corporation. And during that period, I suffered so much psychological bullying. It was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I knew they were listening to everything that I said, and, it hasn't left me. 2013, I know, you guys are Christians. I certainly am. I'm open to this whole new global awakening thing as well. Mm-hmm. And I know, staunch Christians are totally against that, and I understand that as well. But at the same time, in Christianity, we respect everything. So it's just suddenly hit me. I won't go into the details as to why. Just in time for what was called the Mayan shift, I was reawoken to something that I realized was going to happen 20-odd years ago by somebody. It was like somebody suddenly turning on a light. And what Alex is doing, his energy, his message for people is just so fantastic. Now he's done this, people are going to be aware that they're all being listened to. Just an interesting point, okay? I don't want this to get boring because I've made my girlfriend absolutely sick and tired, and unfortunately she introduced of going on and on about all this. But I had a conversation with I'm in Hartford, yeah, which is the county town of Hertfordshire. You have a Hartford in the States, which is named after this town. Mm-hmm. So it's near Watford, and I'm hoping to catch up with Alex over the weekend. I've got my children coming down from Scotland. I may pop down, hoping to pop down on the Sunday. I think he's still going to be there. But I had a conversation with an arms officer. Now, as you know, we officially, police don't carry guns here.
We're getting up close to a break. Getting close to a break, Gordon. Get us to the end of the story here quickly as you can.
Yeah, okay. Right, well, my friend, who has a child in the same school as my children used to go to, I said, have you heard about the secret meeting? This is about 2 weeks ago before it, and I saw Alex in the coverage, and he said, what do you know about it? And, this is a family man, a nice man. His wife goes to the same church as I do.
All right, hang on. We'll be right back to get the rest of that right after the break. Stay tuned.
We're on the march. The Empire.
Back at the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to callers, and we're going to have some Alex interviews coming up. We were just talking to Gordon from London, and he was right at a cliffhanger when we had to go to break, and I wanted to hear the end of that story. Gordon, you still there?
Yes, David.
Could you tell us real quickly, you were telling us that you had somebody that you talked to that didn't know anything about the Bilderberg meeting. Go ahead and get that point quickly. I've got some other people on the line, but I'd like to hear how that ends.
Constabulary, who are the security for all this. I thought, okay, well, I'll check him out because I don't believe in hiding things. Whereas I knew that I was possibly putting myself in a difficult situation for him. But I said, have you heard about this secret society meeting? Are you working over the weekend? He said, no. What are you talking about? And so, of course, I went to it, and he said, it's not secret. And I said, yeah, but it has been hidden. And he said, yeah, but you know about it, I know about it. So obviously the whole of the Hertfordshire Constabulary had been briefed about it. Therefore, the more these people have to try and protect themselves, the more it's infiltrating out into the general man, the common man, and woman and child.
That's right.
And I've seen Alex talk, being by the police, people asking the police questions. And my point is that, we've really got to get on board with this. Have faith. Alex is just leading. He's leading an amazing opportunity for us to do this, but it needs to be done, obviously, peacefully. We don't want anybody thinking, we don't want a civil war. We don't want people overthrowing with violence or anything like that, because that's just replacing the same with the same, and then Satan gets in there, and it starts all over again. So,
violence is their technique. They're the ones who have the assassination kill list. They're the ones who fire missiles at people from the air. They're the ones who kill thousands of people, the ones who have the secret bombings of Cambodia. That's their tactic. What we're trying to do is fight them with the truth. We're trying to shine the light on them. That's what Alex has done. He's forcing these cockroaches out into the open. They can no longer credibly deny that this meeting exists. Up until just a couple of years ago, that was their strategy. As Glenn Greenwald talked about when he first covered it in 2009, they were being chased around Spain by security services. That just doesn't work anymore. But they are still hiding their agenda. They're still trying to pretend that this is something that is not important. And yet we have prime ministers, chancellors of the exchequer taking time out of their calendar for 2 days, going there and meeting and not having any transparency, any disclosure about what is being covered there. That is absolutely criminal. It invites corruption. It breeds corruption. We've seen it. We know that happens. Let's go to Rod in France. Rod, are you there?
Can you hear me, David?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Really good to get to talk to you. I tried to get in yesterday to make some comments on some points that you brought up about whistleblowers, how it's so important that these people come out in the open. And as Alex said today on the show, I think it's really important that we really try to stand behind these people because they're coming out and telling us the truth and telling us the things that are going on, and they're putting themselves at risk. And I really feel like they need our support. And a second thing I'd like to say, while I've got you on the line, is you were speaking about a petition, to get Obama to resign. Is it possible, like in Colorado with the recall vote that they're doing in Colorado, would it be possible to go state by state and get actually all the states to get 7,000 signatures, or I don't know if it's per capita or how that works, but
I really don't know what the legal process is. I believe that impeachment needs to start in the House. It may be done completely in the House. I really haven't looked at that, but I'm hoping that someone will do something about that. We had an article, what you were just talking about, in the Atlantic by Connor Friedersdorf, said the unknown patriot who exposed the government's Verizon spy program, and he says in it, why did he do it? It's impossible to know, but it isn't hard to identify likely motives. Perhaps the leaker felt morally repulsed by the knowledge that the government is spying on millions of innocent citizens in secret, something normally associated with communist and fascist regimes, not with democratic republics. Well, that is the direction that we are headed, into fascism. And we should all be repulsed by this. We should all thank the person who leaked this. And I think it puts WikiLeaks, it puts what's going on with Bradley Manning in an entirely different perspective, doesn't it? And we need to think about that. We need to be grateful to people who, when they see the government breaking its own laws which, as I said before, fly in the face of the Constitution, and even those new unconstitutional laws are not enough of a restriction for these people. We need to get together, we need to do something, and we need to demand that congressmen, whether they're opposition congressmen or whether you get people like Ron Wyden and Rand Paul can get together on civil liberties issues like this. There are people in the House where this needs to start that can come together on this. And we need to say to our congressional representatives, if you do not impeach somebody who has done something like this, like Obama, you are part of the problem. You are enabling them. You are tacitly approving of what they're doing by your inaction and by your silence. You need to do something, Congressman, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. It was Republicans getting behind the impeachment of Richard Nixon that made him resign. And they stayed on the wrong side of that argument for far too long. And we got a lot of Democrats who are on the wrong side of this argument for far too long on this right now. Now, of course, Obama, if he gets out, is going to be replaced by somebody who probably has a lot of his same agenda. But it is important that people understand, it's important that the next person that comes into power understands that the people are not going to tolerate this, that the Congress is not going to tolerate this kind of blanket repudiation of the Constitution they swore to uphold. We need to make sure they're going to understand that and that they are chastened by that. That's why we need to get Obama out. Even if we put somebody in that's going to be as bad or worse than Obama, we've got to take action. We cannot allow this to continue. Let's go to our next caller here. We've got Justin in Missouri. Justin, can you hear me?
Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to, Alex has got to get that bullhorn that he's sitting next to signed by all these people he's got coming on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's all I wanted to say. Maybe
okay.
Get a little more for that Land the Money Bomb this year.
All right, great. That's good. Thank you. Noel in Illinois. Noel, what's your point?
Yeah, it's Noel, like the Christmas song.
Oh, okay.
Great job as always. Yeah, no worries. Before I get into Bilderberg, anyone in the Utah area, you may want to go up to Park City, Utah. There's an off-the-record meeting taking place as we speak. I'm not sure if anyone has noticed this. Mitt Romney is hosting a summit, Experts and Enthusiasts Summit, where no media coverage will be taking place at all. It's probably like a quasi-Bilderberg-ish. It's an off-the-record meeting with some pretty big names. Chris Christie's going to be there. It's been reported Rand Paul was there today giving a speech. David Icke, who's buddies with the president. A lot of big names, Paul Ryan and others, are attending this off-the-record meeting up in Park City, Utah. So if anyone in Utah who listens to the show may want to check that out, you can search online. It's called the Experts and Enthusiasts Conference. And, average Joes could attend. It's $5,000 a plate that goes to Mitt Son Tag's hedge fund group.
Oh, there we go.
Chicago.
Okay.
So again, it's called the Experts and Enthusiasts Conference. And I called during the week mentioning about tweeting Jake Tapper to try to get him to cover Bilderberg, and I was shocked to see yesterday watching Jake Tapper show the lead on CNN. Towards the end of his show, he spent a whole segment on Bilderberg. He had a news package talking about Bilderberg.
They can no longer ignore it. They look foolish and stupid if they do, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to spin it. And he did covered Alex Jones. He had some of the great B-roll graphics up there that Darren McBreen did, and I think maybe John Bound might have contributed some of that stuff to it. But they talk about Alex. They take some of his comments out of context. They put something in there about Jesse Ventura saying they're trying to kill me. And it's like, of course, the government would never try to do anything like that. I'm sure that Jesse Ventura wouldn't be on a hit list from Obama's drones, nothing like that. But they try to make him look ridiculous. They try to pretend that Bilderberg doesn't mean anything now that they can't deny that it exists. Let's go to this interview that we've got here that the Huffington Post had with Alex Jones, and he's talking about how the secrecy of Bilderberg has now been exposed.
So I talked to like 200 people on all these questions. Okay, go ahead, start over.
Alex, we heard that David Cameron is actually going to attend this meeting today. Are you surprised it's going down, and is there an obvious conflict of interest there?
Well, I kind of halfway expected something like this to happen because they've gone from being secret and saying anybody that talks about it is a kook or conspiracy theorist to now, okay, we're real, but we're just a little political chat. And so they want to hide in plain view and have David Cameron come here. And who knows, Sarkozy may come here. The word does Bill Gates. He's going to be sneaking in. A lot of times there's 20, 30 to 50 people who aren't on the list, and those are usually the real conflict of interest, and that's who they'll have sneak in or land behind fences and helicopters. But the fact that Cameron is openly announcing as the head of a major state that he's going to be attending in the middle of it, I think this is Bilderberg pretty much going public. And that's actually what I was told from my Senate sources and what I was told by a major Hollywood source through a member of the Bilderberg group, that they are having a major debate about just opening up their entire operation to the press, or at least the speeches they give that are Davos-like. But it's the break-off groups where the real collusion goes on, the price fixing. I mean, there have been indictments before. There have been investigations back in the 70s with Lockheed and Prince Bernhard and jet deals with the Netherlands. So that's the type of things that go on here. And we've just been trying, myself for 18 years, to get the public to understand there are these types of super high-level power broker meetings going on. It was Westbrook Pegler back in the 50s that happened to be on vacation and see a hotel locked down and people he knew, famous people, world leaders there. And he was a syndicated columnist and wrote about it, and they said, shut up. And he said, shut up? What, there's something above government? And then it just grew from there. We didn't even know the name of it until about 35 years ago.
Do you think that the fact that it is going public now, and festivals like this, the Fringe going on, will the influence of the Bilderberg group wane, do you think?
I think that the influence of the Bilderberg group has waned because of exposure, but it's waned even more in just the last few years. Now it's completely evident today because of the fact that the founding members have died, like Prince Bernhard, or they're so old, like Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller. What we're really seeing is more than a death. We're seeing a passing of the torch to what I call Googleberg, and we have insiders on that. That's what really freaked them out why they threw us out days before it even started. We have sources in government that also confirm for people that were in the hotel that work there that indeed Google is basically organizing and running it all and uses this kind of as a command base on a routine basis. This is a Google command base. Google brags they planned and launched the Arab Spring here. And so it's Google is merging with Bilderberg, and Facebook is merging with Bilderberg, and the torch is being passed really this year. That's why Queen Beatrix is now stepping down. Her son's going to become the king. A total torch passing is going on right now inside. And this is a big victory for those of us that pointed out the obvious. There are powerful corporate groups above government manipulating things. They're the ones that set up the EU. A lot of their minutes have leaked. Documents have been stolen. They've confirmed they're real. WikiLeaks. They set a lot of policies. They steer much of our world. And the people that are attendees, they steer other organizations that manage other areas. But this is right up at the top of the pyramid. It's one of the oldest continued and most prestigious within the establishment meetings. I mean, if you get the Bilderberg nod like Bill Clinton did in 1991, little-known governor, you're going right at the top. If you get the Bilderberg nod like Tony Blair did 2 years before he became prime minister, they plan things 2, 3, 4 years out on the schemes and the programs, and always right after Bilderberg, you then see their talking points being regurgitated at G8 and G20, being pushed by the media outlets they own and control.
Just finally, Alex, are you seeing more interest in this kind of thing from around the globe? Obviously, very much focused on the US, but the global conspiracy that you're looking at here. Are you seeing people come to your site? Are you getting letters from people around the world, from the UK, from Europe?
Absolutely. I mean, our website, Infowars.com, is visited by people all over the planet. The radio show is listened to by people all over the planet. I've run into people on the streets of London. When I'm just walking in the dark, I hear my voice come over, of all race, colors, creeds. I've gone out into some of the tourist areas and run into people that live in London and just been basically mobbed by people that are listeners over here. So people are as awake in England to what's going on as they are in Texas, where I live. And so I think it's a populism that transcends left and right. As people begin to try to figure out exactly who the special interests are that always get the front seats, who always get first dibs at the table, who get bailed out for trillions of dollars. I mean, that's what's going on in there. Tax avoidance for the ultra-rich, setting agendas, price fixing. They've been caught before, and that's why they always told the media, just say we don't exist or you're fired. I've talked to national press people just this year who were told, do not go cover Bilderberg. I've talked to national press profilers in the United States who were said, of course, I can do whatever I want. I'll be allowed to go to England and cover you. Famous reporters. And then they're told, no, they told me, don't go. And by the way, don't mention Bilderberg in your piece. So that's the type of stuff that's going on. I talked to 5 different national media outlets who were already doing profiles on me, and several of them asked to come here and were told they couldn't. And one of them told me off record, no, you're right. Well, I'm blown away. They said, don't even mention that. And then they asked the editor of the major magazine, well, why? They said, just we'll keep the job, just don't get into it. Because in the United States, it's finally been in the Huffington Post. It's finally been in CNBC covered it. I mean, just 4 years ago, the New York Times did an article, a film review of a film called New World Order, with a film crew that was there just covering me, covered Bilderberg. They had helicopters, armored limousines coming in. They had Secret Service with MP5s aiming them at us. I mean, it was a circus. And the New York Times said Jones was in a Marriott, field imagining all this. That mean, wow. I mean, no wonder circulation of those establishment publications is down, because everybody online saw the video. They knew it was real and happening. I mean, imagine the New York Times. Can the New York Times today say Jones was in England imagining stuff? Probably will. And they've got a certain audience that they could tell anything they wanted to. I mean, it's just, it doesn't mean I have all the answers either about what's going on. It doesn't mean everybody in there is openly evil or consciously evil. It just means that there is power structures that are always trying to manipulate our countries, and they don't want us to even know that's happening.
Well, that's Alex Jones talking to the Huffington Post in London at the Bilderberg event. We're going to be coming back after the break, and we're going to be talking to Richard in Texas about Bilderberg. And we've also got Chris in Florida calling us to talk about that Sheriff Nicholas Finch, who was taken out of office and is possibly facing some criminal charges because he would not enforce unconstitutional laws as a sheriff. That's a key event right there. We got to follow that, and we'll be right back to talk to these people right after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Icke, filling in for Alex Jones. We just had a report that 3 people have been reported wounded in Santa Monica, California. If there's any news updates on that, we'll be following it on the nightly news tonight. Rob Dew will be hosting. Now, stop and think for a moment, though, without being insensitive, it's a tragedy when anything like this happens. But if this was an automobile accident where there were 3 people injured in an automobile accident in Santa Monica, California, would that be national news? Just stop and think about the fact, why is that even national news? We just had a building collapse in Philadelphia that injured 2 people and killed 2 people and injured quite a few others. About the same number of casualties that happened at the Boston bombing. And look at the way things are spun differently. When we see this happen with the building collapse in Philadelphia, everybody is touched by the tragedy of it, but there's not calls to outlaw buildings or whatever. But that's what you always see whenever it's something that they can use to forward their agenda of the police state. They will use it, and they will publicize it. So we hope that there are no deaths there. Our thoughts and prayers with those people who've been injured in California, and we'll see what comes of that as we move along. But right now, let's move to a call. We've got a caller in, Richard in Texas. Richard, are you there?
Yeah, I'll be real quick. I just wanted to share a story with you since you're talking about the Bilderbergs and police states. I moved to Beverly Hills, California, Los Angeles, California back in '81, and I took a bike messenger job up in Beverly Hills because my brother had been picked up for parking in front of employment, which was Western Union at the time. They threw him in prison. Well, in jail first, in prison later. And he hadn't paid some parking tickets, so they needed a new guy to fill his position, so I became the bike messenger. Now, my first day on the job, I completed the day. I got lost a lot delivering the mail, so I finally completed the day. It happened to be 104 degrees that day, too. And I'm riding up and down Beverly Hills trying to deliver high-dollar Western Union monograms. So at the last minute before I was getting off at about 4 o'clock, all of a sudden about, I don't know how many units came. They encircled me. They pit me up against a building right there on Wilshire Boulevard, the richest street in the world, they say. They put 100 guns in my head. Literally, it was like Yosemite Sam or somebody drawing down on me. And I'll try to be real quick because I know you got to get off. But they eventually arrested me after leaving me in the sun for about an hour to sweat out. 2 old citizens came by and pointed the finger at me. I was allegedly the one who beat them up in Beverly Hills, took their gold, and I'm still stupid enough to be riding around delivering high-dollar Western Union MoneyGrams. But they put me in jail that night. They kept me all night. Didn't get to make a phone call to my new employer. Then I found out that everybody else that was in jail that day were actually being held over so they could have their identities checked, because this was before the computers. Now, the point I'm making, Beverly Hills is like a small bastion for the Bohemian Grove, New World Order types, and I'm sure you know that. So if you and Alex Jones and the rest of us don't defeat these criminals, they'll turn the entire American police force into the Beverly Hills police force.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the document they released me with said detainment. They didn't say they arrested me. So
yeah, right.
They put 100 pills in my head and let me off the next day.
Well, Richard, they just passed the Senate just passed a law, but it hasn't. It's still got to go through the other house and be signed. But in New York, they just passed a law saying that it's going to be a felony to annoy a policeman. You know, you can't annoy your masters. I think what needs to happen is I think they need to take New York and they need to take California, let them secede from the Union, and maybe they can do something kind of like they had East and West Pakistan and leave the rest of us alone to go our own way. But it's getting really bad with New York and with California especially. But it's a template, and we see that they're just not respecting individual rights anymore. Well, that's it for tonight. Tune into the Nightly News with Rob Dew tonight.